got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.
My name is Peterson Washira.
My name is Mary Boniface.
My name is George Gibore.
I am the National Chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the General Secretary, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
We have a program called KUCOEngage, a program by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers that intends to foster conversations that matter for clinical officers.
Through this program, we plan to look into the history and the current situation of clinical medicine as a profession and how to even go through the career ladder to the topmost within the profession.
Our focus is purely about our enthusiasm as the Clinical Officers Union to inform our member about our history, being the longest serving professional in the country since 1928. We have a long history that we want our members to know.
We intend to foster meaningful conversations, deliberations, so that as clinical officers, as a family, we can be able to move this profession forward.
And therefore, it's going to be a very engaging time for us to be able to learn from where we have come from, where we are heading, and where we want to go.
We are going to have panelists coming from the most experienced to the new generation to speak about ourselves and inform ourselves on a number of other issues, including opportunity, the legal framework that provide for our existence.
One person named Peter Drucker said that the best way to predict the future is by creating it, and a future will be created when clinical officers can be able to sit together, deliberate, and have conversations that give them a way forward into what kind of a future they want for their profession.
Because we want us to become the best profession, the best healthcare practitioners that there is in East and in East Africa and generally in the whole continent.
Every Wednesday, every third Wednesday in each month, we are going to have these conversations between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to ensure that we can be able to cover a wide scope of the conversations that clinical officers have been yearning for, so that we can provide solutions for many of the issues that have been bedeviling our profession, from academic advancement to an employment crisis to financial well-being.
And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to participate in these sessions so that we can learn together, grow together, and be able to practice clinical medicine with the best that we got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.
My name is Peterson Washira.
My name is Mary Boniface.
My name is George Gibore.
I am the National Chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the General Secretary, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
We have a program called KUCOEngage, a program by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers that intends to foster conversations that matter for clinical officers.
Through this program, we plan to look into the history and the current situation of clinical medicine as a profession and how to even go through the career ladder to the topmost within the profession.
Our focus is purely about our enthusiasm as the Clinical Officers Union to inform our member about our history, being the longest serving a professional in the country since 1928. We have a long history that we want our members to know.
We intend to foster meaningful conversations, deliberations, so that as clinical officers, as a family, we can be able to move this profession forward.
And therefore, it's going to be a very engaging time for us to be able to learn from where we have come from, where we are heading, and where we want to go.
We are going to have panelists coming from the most experienced to the new generation to speak about ourselves and inform ourselves on a number of others, including opportunity, the legal framework that provide for our existence.
One person named Peter Drucker said that the best way to predict the future is by creating it, and a future will be created when clinical officers can be able to sit together, deliberate, and have conversations that give them a way forward into what kind of a future they want for their profession.
Because we want us to become the best profession, the best healthcare practitioners that there is in East and in East Africa and generally in the whole continent.
Every Wednesday, every third Wednesday in each month, we are going to have these conversations between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to ensure that we can be able to cover a wide scope of the conversations that clinical officers have been yearning for, so that we can provide solutions for many of the issues that have been bedeviling our profession, from academic advancement to an employment crisis to financial well-being.
And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to participate in these sessions so that we can learn together, grow together, and be able to practice clinical medicine with the best that we got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.
My name is Peterson Washira.
My name is Mary Boniface.
My name is George Gibore.
I am the National Chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the General Secretary, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
We have a program called KUCOEngage, a program by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers that intends to foster conversations that matter for clinical officers.
Through this program, we plan to look into the history and the current situation of clinical medicine as a profession, and how to even go through the career ladder to the topmost within the profession.
Our focus is purely about our enthusiasm as the Clinical Officers Union to inform our member about our history, being the longest serving professional in the country since 1928. We have a long history that we want our members to know.
We intend to foster meaningful conversations, deliberations, so that as clinical officers, as a family, we can be able to move this profession forward.
And therefore, it's going to be a very engaging time for us to be able to learn from where we have come from, where we are heading, and where we want to go.
We are going to have panelists coming from the most experienced to the new generation to speak about ourselves and inform ourselves on a number of others, including opportunity, the legal framework that provide for our existence.
One person named Peter Drucker said that the best way to predict the future is by creating it, and a future will be created when clinical officers can be able to sit together, deliberate, and have conversations that give them a way forward into what kind of a future they want for their profession.
Because we want us to become the best profession, the best healthcare practitioners that there is in East and in East Africa and generally in the whole continent.
Every Wednesday, every third Wednesday in each month, we are going to have these conversations between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to ensure that we can be able to cover a wide scope of the conversations that clinic officers have been yearning for, so that we can provide solutions for many of the issues that have been bedeviling our profession, from academic advancement to unemployment crisis to financial well-being.
And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to participate in these sessions so that we can learn together, grow together, and be able to practice clinical medicine with the best that we got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.
My name is Peterson Washira.
My name is Mary Boniface.
My name is George Gibore.
I am the National Chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the General Secretary, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
We have a program called KUCOEngage, a program by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers that intends to foster conversations that matter for clinical officers.
Through this program, we plan to look into the history and the current situation of clinical medicine as a profession, and how to even go through the career ladder to the topmost within the profession.
Our focus is purely about our enthusiasm as the Clinical Officers Union to inform our member about our history, being the longest serving professional in the country since 1928. We have a long history that we want our members to know.
We intend to foster meaningful conversations, deliberations, so that as clinical officers, as a family, we can be able to move this profession forward.
And therefore, it's going to be a very engaging time for us to be able to learn from where we have come from, where we are heading, and where we want to go.
We are going to have panelists coming from the most experienced to the new generation to speak about ourselves and inform ourselves on a number of other issues, including opportunity, the legal framework that provide for our existence.
One person named Peter Drucker said that the best way to predict the future is by creating it.
Yeah, Nelson, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Very well. So we're about to start. It's already 10 minutes past 3. We have quite a packed program with quite a number of panelists who we intend to hear from. We have Mary Boniface on the call, my co-moderator. Very well. Do we have Matole on the line? The President, KCOA. Okay, they are going to join us. Nelson, you look for them. We also have our panelists with us. We have the President of the IAPAE, Mr. Scott. You on the call?
Yes, Mr. Scott has joined under IAPAE. That's Mr. Scott as president. Thank you.
Very well. So Nelson, there is the International Academy of Physician Associates. You allow that account to be able to turn on their mic. He's one of the panelists. He's the past president, and we have the current president, who is Ms. Lumbani. She's on the call. She has confirmed. She'll be able to introduce herself later. We also have the president for the Global Association of Clinical Officers, Physician Associates and Analogs. Austin Oduola, are you there? Good, he's joining. We also have the one of the NEC members and our treasurer who is currently working in the UK, Mr. Maskuji, are you there?
Yes, I'm in, Chair. Thank you.
Very well. We also have another clinic officer working in UK, Mr. Karani. Are you on the call?
Yes, Peterson Washira, I'm here.
Very well. And lastly, we have our brother, the Vice President of the Union of Botswana, Mr. Sebeso. Are you on the call? Yeah, he said he's going to join a little bit later, or I can actually see he's here. Very well. Now that I have confirmed, do we have my co-moderators on the call? Mary Boniface?
Yes, Chair, I am here.
Very well. Do we have Matole on the call? Good. Let us start. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you have seen in the video that I was playing, you can remove the video, Nelson, is that we have a program that we are running as the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers based in Kenya, and the program is christened KUCOEngage, where we just have conversations that matter to the clinical officers, and it provides a platform where clinical officers can come together and deliberate about the issues affecting them, the opportunities, the challenges, and what they see as the recommendations as to the better future of their profession. We have had many topics before. We started in January, and on every third Wednesday of the month, we meet here to deliberate on different issues. So you can be able to, for those who are not panelists or moderators, you will be able to interact with us through the chat box where you can ask your questions. As moderators, we will be asking the questions for you at the end of the call. And if you may need to speak, then you can also request for the mic, and we will be able to give you the rights to be able to do the same. So our topic today is about the globalization of the profession. We are talking about the common nomenclature and the background thereof. We'll also be talking about the harmonization of curriculum currently underway under the IAPAE. And then we have the international labor market for clinical officers, and do we have enabling legal frameworks? So we are going to center our deliberations around these four topics and any other that we may have. It is going to be an open conversation where we are going to pose open-ended questions to the panelists, and they can respond and to the best of their knowledge for the benefit of the clinical officers in Kenya. But we understand that we have many of us from across the East Africa and even globally on the call, and who are going to join the call. So we start with introductions. We start with ourselves as the moderators. My name is Peterson Washira. I am the National Chair for Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. I will be moderating the session alongside Mary Boniface and the President of the Kenya Clinical Officers Association. So Mary Boniface, you can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Boniface. I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. Welcome to our third KUCOEngage session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mary. We also have Matole. I don't know if he has already joined the call. Very well. Nelson, you can check in case he doesn't have the right to the mic. You can ensure that he does. Then now we can go to our panelists for today. And in no particular order, let's start with Mr. Scott Smalley. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, colleagues. It is morning here. You find myself in the United States. I'm traveling. I'm normally based in South Africa, but my name is Scott Smalley, and I am the immediate past president of the International Academy of Physician Associate Educators, or as we say together, IAPAE. Wonderful to be on the panel. Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to the discussion for global standardization. Thank you, Chair.
IAPAE, indeed, Mr. Scott Smalley has really contributed to the globalization in his own capacity and inspired many of us to be able to take on that journey. We have the current president, an iron lady from South Africa, Miss Lumbani. Please introduce yourself. Please unmute.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, colleagues. I am Lumbani Toteti, immediate current president of IAPAE. I am based in South Africa, a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. I'm so excited to be here and thank you so much for the invitation. We hope to engage and see what the future holds for PA and clinical officers analogs on a global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lumbani. We also have the president of Global Association for Clinical Officers and Physician Associates and Analogs, Mr. Austin Odor. Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Austin Odor Otieno. I'm the president of the Global Association of Clinical Officers and Physician Associates. I'm also the person who has introduced me as my boss in the union. So I'm also the National Deputy Secretary of the union. But I think on this particular platform, I'm here because courtesy of being the president of GACOPA. It is a good initiative that as a union, we are trying to really make it to engage our members so that they fully understand what it is outside Kenya when it comes to globalization of our cadre. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. President. Austin is one person who has dedicated his time and resources to this cause of globalization. And we really appreciate as clinical officers and analogs across the globe. We also have Mr. Makange Maskuji, who is also an EC member and practicing in the UK. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My name is Makange Maskuji, and I'm a clinical officer. I'm also the Assistant National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers, currently in the UK, and in the process of registration as Physician Associate here in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Makange, and for taking this time. You are going to give us some very good insights because we are able to compare the environment in Kenya, the environment in the UK, and how we can be able to transition. And together with him, we also have another clinical officer who has been practicing there for quite some time, Mr. Karani. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, viewers. I'm Dennis Karani, clinical officer currently in the UK. I've been here for quite some time now. That's 2.5 years, heading more than 2.5. I think by June it'll be 3 years. It's quite a good experience. We'll be sharing around, and I'm also in the process of registering to be a physician associate so that I can practice here in the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Karani. We are waiting to hear from you. We also have my brother from Botswana, the Vice President of the Union for the Analogs for Clinical Officers there, Mr. Sebeso. Please introduce yourself.
Greetings everyone from Botswana. My name is Thabo Sebeso. I am the Vice President of Botswana Clinical Officers Union. So I'm looking forward to this engagement.
Thank you. We are glad to have you here. And lastly, we have our General Secretary who will also be joining us as a panelist to give the Kenyan experience. Mr. George Gibore, please introduce yourself. I don't know if he's already on the call. Yeah, since he hasn't joined, he'll be joining us in the due course as we continue. So let's start with a few introduction into our institutions, and especially the institutions that are helping us to do this, the globalization across the continents in the world. So let's start with the oldest, and that is the International Academy of Physician Associates Educators. And I think we can start, you can share this between the immediate past president and the current. I'm sure there is history to it, and there is what is currently happening. So let us start with Mr. Scott, so that he can give us the history and how they came to form this academy and to where we are. And then so that then we can hand it over to the current president to tell us about the IAPAE and the prospects. Mr. Scott, over to you.
Asante sana, and thank you, everyone. Very glad to be here for the panel. So IAPAE began in 2007, and the mission is to support and promote PA and clinical officer analog educators around the world. So we're an international education academy, and we're made up of faculty members of the educational entities that provide education for clinical officers and PAs around the world. And we're really promoting the education, promoting the educator and the education. And we're very proud that we've hosted an annual conference every year since 2008. And every year we have international delegates coming from around the world to the various locations. We move every year to the different continents because we want to rotate to be able to have people in that area join us. And in addition to our annual conferences, we've also then been developing various projects that support the education of clinical officers, PAs around the world. And one of our recent projects now is the development of the Loop Curriculum Mapping Project. And many of you are probably aware of that as international educators. We meet on the third Friday of every month, and we are now trying to map an example curricula of each country that has the clinical officer PA. And you may be aware that we are found in 68 countries around the world. We've had a recent paper that's been published by Turkowitz et al. That demonstrates that. Although we've done some further work, and we know the number is actually much higher. And this loop work, where we're collecting the curriculum around the world, should help us to demonstrate that. And will also show us the similarities or differences of our education. We don't really have a full handle on what is this global PA clinical officer educated in. So this project will help do that. We're mapping the curricula to the WHO Global Competency Framework, which is for the paramedical practitioners, which is what our group falls into in the International Labor Organization. So that's a really big project we'll talk more about. And IAPAE has also been collaborating with other regional and global associations such as GACOPA to put forward a new title in the International Labor Organization. And this is through the PA Working Group. The PA Working Group is a collaborative of international educators and practitioners that are speaking with International Labor Organization, as we are proposing the global title Clinical Practitioner. And we want to then list all 35 country practice titles that are associated with us as clinical officers and PAs. And so we're really working with the PA Working Group on doing that. And of course, we're also doing regional representation. So we're very proud that our board has 5 regional directors and spanning the globe for contact on the ground and forming chapters and promotion of activities of education that are taking place. And through this, we also then have our quarterly international educator meetings. So we meet every 3 months, and we have different topics that'll be shared and discussed, and a platform for networking to come together. So we started in 2007. We promote the clinical associate education, clinical officer education around the world. We have annual conferences, and we're currently working on several projects, which Lombani might share more about, and other activities, such as our loop curriculum mapping, such as our international quarterly educator meetings that takes place. Thank you. I'll stop there and share for my president to continue.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Scott. Lumbani, you can take over from there.
Thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate for that. Just to mention that getting involved with IAPAE is something that everyone needs to do, because as GACOPA is looking at the profession, but yet we can't have a profession without the educators. We can't have a profession without the students. So IAPAE is your to-go-to, which is to enhance the promotion of health promotion on a global level. We have partners, for instance, we have Prof. Scott Messi, who is looking at coaching the students so that they can finish in a short time span, so that they can be resilient, whatever the challenges that they can face. And again, we are looking at what is it that we can do so that our profession goes from strength to strength. You are aware that there is lots of regulatory things that are happening, negativity out there, but we're not focusing on such negativity. We are not focusing at the challenges. We're focusing at how best can we show that our profession is worthy being accepted in each and every country. How does that go? We need educators who can be writing articles. We need you as professionals to be part of the process, whereby we can not fight physically, but we can show the value add that PAs and PA global clinical officers, whatever the name is, how they are able to help the health the health industry in promoting universal health coverage. Again, we have student platforms. For instance, I remember we had a GACOPA chapter. In terms of IAPAE, we also have adopted IFPACS, which is one of the global student chapter, which we're looking at mentoring so that these students can be tomorrow's educators, tomorrow's profession. As PAs, we need to get to a point whereby we are proud of our profession and be able to showcase that we are capable. We are so happy that, for instance, the GCP GMC in UK is looking at accepting PAs from various countries. But for them to allow the clean A's or PAs to be accepted in the country, it simply means that the educators have to come up with a framework that can support, that can showcase that there is synergy in the different curricula. That's why our past president, Mr. Scott, spoke about the loop. That's where we are showcasing that as a Malawian, as a South African, as a Canadian, as whatever country that we are coming from, we are actually meeting on maybe anatomy, maybe public health. These are the modules, these are the curricula that we are similar. So really appreciate to be here and hope to share more as we proceed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Madam Lumbani and Mr. Scott from the IAPAE. Will be delving more into the curriculum, and you're going to tell us about what is this loop and what is it doing and how is it helping us to achieve this goal of globalization. That is for the academicians and our educators. But now when we come to the other side about all of us associating together, then we have the Global Association for Clinical Officers and Physician Associates. And I want to welcome the president who is on the call to just tell us about the GACOPA and what is its objectives currently and what are they doing, so that then once we understand this, we can be able to go into the nomenclature. How are they supporting? Are they looking at the legal framework? And what are they doing about it? So that then we can now go into the experiences. So Mr. President Austin, The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think it's raining this side of western part of Kenya, but I hope I'm clear enough. I'd already introduced myself,
You
and
are.
thank you so much, Mr. Chairman of the union, for giving me this chance to speak. GACOPA is a global association of clinical officers and physician associates, and we are proud that since we came into being in 2018, we've grown, and we've really tried to put the clinical officers or physician associates or the analogs. The analogs are those other names that we really had to dig into these different countries and check if we have similar professions, and we've done well. We are now doing our 5th international conference. The first conference was just a tiny gathering at the University of Professional Studies in Accra, Ghana, when like-minded clinical officers, PAs, and all those titles, medical assistants, I don't want to name all of them, but Scott, the former president of IAPAE, will tell you that there are more than 30. And the reason why GACOPA was formed, we thought it wise that we needed to have a common name. And apart from the common name will go hand in hand with a common curriculum. And now IAPAE is doing, we call it here in Kenya, the Lord's work. And they are really trying to ensure that we have that common curriculum. So I want to say, since we were formed in 2018, our first gathering was in 2019, and that was in Accra, Ghana. And with around 100 people attending that conference at the University of Professional Studies, then we decided that now we will be moving to countries where we really feel that the profession has been neglected. The profession really, the government, and those who attended the conference in Kigali, Rwanda, which took place at the University of Rwanda, Chikondo campus. It was a very, very well-attended conference, and it's the first time that even the NCCPA, IAPAE, PAEA, and most organizations attended the conference. Remember, and looking at we did the
Yeah, Mr. President, I think your network is not very good.
Oh, I'm not.
Yeah, at some point we are losing you. Maybe you can find some better network.
Are you getting me now?
And then we come back to you. Yes, we are coming. Okay. Yes.
Are you getting me now?
Proceed, please.
Okay. So I think I was just summarizing. After Rwanda, we went to Malaysia and we had a very successful conference there in Putrajaya, the Ebali Hotel, and it was attended, and all those details are found on our social media and website. We went to Botswana again, where the profession is just trying to come up, recognized by law, but there is nothing. The people who are being trained there from that country are being trained with different names. So again, there's a lot of activities that we are doing in Botswana, and we believe that it's just a matter of time, and everything will be solved there in Botswana. So after that successful conference in Botswana, now we are heading to our 5th international conference that will take place in Acton University, that is in Birmingham, August 27th to 30th this year, and I encourage everyone to attend. Then from there we'll go to India and most likely New Zealand, and then we'll wrap it up with Puerto Rico as we now come back again. So I just want to say that this is a good initiative, and for GACOPA, apart from holding those conferences, we really do a lot of diplomacy, shuttle diplomacy, networking, engaging with government, and just trying to spread the gospel of clinical medicine, that the clinical officers, the physician associates, the physician assistants, we engage and we attend most of these activities that will really bring us together. We also attend regional conferences. We have one that is coming up next month in Ethiopia, that is for the East Africa. There's one that will take place in Abuja, Nigeria. But again, we also reach out to these countries where our expertise is needed just to support them. And apart from that, to encourage them, and also we work hand in hand with IAPAE to ensure that these things are done well. And of course, the announcement that we made about the UK, it is the push that we've been doing together with the IAPAE that has now even made the UK government now, through the General Medical Council, to now start accrediting the clinical officers. We've been quoted several times by the GMC and all those teams there. Again, now the United States of America is now following suit. They are organizing a meeting, I think, next week, where they are going to try to see if the PAs from, or the clinical officers or the physician associates from outside the United States can easily be registered by the NCCPA in the United States. So a lot of this we'll discuss as the meeting continue, but then I'm happy that some of the members we have here, some are already members of the COPA, and again, as we'll continue discussing about the main agenda or the main topic that we have here, there are a lot of questions that we'll answer as we move forward. Otherwise, thank you, and thank you, the chair and the moderators as we proceed with the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. And before I hand it over to my co-moderator, let us start with the question of nomenclature, common nomenclature. And basically, when we say common nomenclature, for the understanding of those on the call, we are talking about titles. We have different titles across the globe. And how does this really affect us? We want to hear from Mr. Tambo, the Vice President. Tell us about the titles in Botswana and how that has affected you. So that after you, then we go to Makange Maskuji and Dennis Karani to also give us a perspective on how this affects them in the current environment where they are at.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have already introduced myself. I'm Thabo, the Vice President for Botswana Clinical Officers Union. This is a union that was officially formed in 2021. It was formed by graduates who were trained as doctor's assistants by one of the private institutions here. And I'm happy that we are here today talking about harmonization, something that, because of that lack of harmonization here in Botswana, we find these graduates, they've been experiencing several issues with the registration, or with registration and their entitlement to practice within the healthcare system of Botswana. So these are graduates who are trained as doctor assistants, but upon graduation, they face several challenges because the title doctor assistant was never within the provisions of the Botswana Health Professions Act. So we formed this association, and then after that, me and my other colleagues who are not on the call, we then went to look at the Health Professions Act, and then on that act, we realized that there was the title clinical officer. And we did identify ourselves as clinical officers. We then started the process of engaging both with the Health Professions Council Board and the Ministry of Health to try and harmonize that, to recognize doctors' assistants as clinical officers. It's a process that took almost more than 2 years. At some point, they were even requesting us to provide evidence as to why we are saying we are clinical officers. We did so with the help of IAPAE through Scott Smalley and the COPA. We submitted such evidence to the council, and we are happy that 2 years after our initial engagement, they then recognized us, that they agreed to say that, no, you guys, indeed, we are clinical officers. Because what was there was that, although we are trained as doctor assistants and then clinical officers, we brought up some curriculum from different countries, including Kenya, and we looked at similarities that were existing between, in terms of how doctor assistants were trained in Botswana and how they were trained in other countries. And we found that there were so many similarities to a point where like even the medical board, they had to agree with us. So we had a process that where we are now, by law, doctor's assistants are recognized as clinical officers, although we are just still waiting for the formality, because there's something that they, currently the Ministry of Health and the Health Professions Council are working with some consultants to ensure that now doctor's assistants are going to be recognized legally as clinical officers. And talking about harmonization and title change, this is something that as the union, we have really been pushing. We have been pushing that within our space here in Botswana to ensure that we are known as clinical officers, because there isn't anywhere around the world where we are having doctor's assistants. And I'm sure that most of you are on the call here for the first time, hearing about the situation in Botswana. It's even your first time to hear that there's someone who's called a doctor assistant. And our position as the union, we have always felt that being called an assisting a doctor is something that will jeopardize what we can do as clinical officers. Where we are trained, the way we are trained, we are able to diagnose, we are able to treat. So this is something that when we looked at it through our engagement with the COPA and even at the conference that we held here in Botswana last year, we brought along, even Parliament was there, we discussed these issues with them, and then they were really supportive. And as we speak now, we are really working hand in hand with the Ministry of Health, the Health Professions Council, to ensure that even the training is aligned to the international standards. Because as far as the training of doctor assistant is concerned, there's still some things that are lacking, and through the help of Scott and others, this is something that really the government is even pushing to standardize the training of clinical officers, so that whoever comes here as a clinical officer, you will be registered as leaving the doctor assistant. It will be easy for them to be simply recognized, and we have to align that training to the scope of practice that will also be internationally recognized. So I think I will end there, and I'll wait for if there's any question to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. For those of us who are in Botswana, the hospitality was very warm, and we really thank you and your team. Yeah, let's also hear about the environment in the UK. Let's start with Makange, then we go to Dennis. So how has this question of the titling affected you?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy to be in this forum, and I think I had introduced myself. Yeah, as a clinical officer who was trained in Kenya, can say through the training process in Kenya from a diploma level to a degree level, then happening to have been here in the UK. And I want to appreciate that in recent days, the UK have felt the importance of having a cadre like clinical officers in this country. This all is to try and bridge the gap in the health sector. And they realized that then they need a physician associate. So physician associate program was introduced, which is a postgraduate diploma or master's training. They are trained at that level. And probably after that, they have to go and do a national certification examination, which they call a physician associate national certification examination, before they can practice in the UK. The training itself takes 2 years. Right now, they are in a push to have them regulating themselves an independent body, because they currently under the General Medical Council, JMC, and that is to say that you work under the doctors. There is no independence. So we can say that there are still some teething problems, and I think this happens in every sector where probably a new thing is being introduced. It's a teething challenges which they are trying to work on, but we appreciate the fact that they are opening to include clinical officers and other analog from different countries that they can come register and work as physician associate. Probably maybe I would like to stop at that and give this chance to Karani to also come in. I might be able to come in and expound more if the hosts or if anyone has a question and would like to get more information about the physician associate in UK. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Maskuji. And as Dennis joins, this is also being streamed on the social media platforms, the Facebook and the X account. And I can see many are requesting to see the people who are talking. So I want to request that if you are talking, if you are a panelist or moderator, and if you are in a position to put on your video while you are presenting, we will really appreciate. But if you are not in a position, we'll also understand. So Dennis, how has the title affected you for the 2.5 years you have been in the UK?
Thank you, Peterson, my former chairman, union chairman. Being that we don't have a common title, sometimes is a big challenge, because coming here as a clinical officer, introducing yourself, I am a clinical officer. Most of the people are like, who is this? Who is a clinical officer? And what do you do as a clinical officer? So what I was trying to, like, I'm equal like a physician associate, and they were like, still they didn't understand so much about physician associate. Wherever you go, because it's a new card which was introduced. It didn't start a long time ago, unlike for like Kenya, the US. The physician associate here started early 2000. Then in 2003, the Department of Health in England, that's when they proposed the introduction of physician associate role. And then later in 2005, there was the first pilot training of programs for the physician associate, which was launched. And then in 2008, they had the first cohort of physician associate graduate with the master's level, because here you have to is a master's level. And like maybe in for example, from Kenya where I come from, it's diploma, and then we have the post diploma and the degree, and even we have the masters going up. For them, we have physician associates. They start at the master's level. Well, you have to have a background of maybe a social science or other related science-oriented course before you join the master's level as a physician associate. And then in 2010, they all gained the traction where they had more universities where they began offering the PA trainings programs. And that's when also the NHS started recognizing the value of PAs in addressing the workforce to help seeing the patient. And then in 2015, the Faculty of Physician Associate, FPA, was established by the Royal College of Physician Associate to oversee the profession, set standards, promote the role. And then 2019, the General Medical Council was announced as the future regulator for physician associate in the UK, which marked a significant step towards the formal recognition and also regulation of the profession. Then by 2024, officially now the GMC began registering the physician associate, and then because they had an interim register, now they had to take that interim register and accommodate all of them, and now officially register them and regulate them. Though, as my colleague has said, Makange, there has been a push and pull for whereby they have their own regulatory body. There is a court case on the same, and also they don't have a clear outlined scope of practice, what they should do and what they should not do. And most of the time being there, they work under the doctor supervision. Anything they do is under the doctor's supervision, be it prescribed. They don't prescribe, they only maybe make a diagnosis, and then issues with the prescription is left to the doctors. I think that's one of the reasons why they're fighting to have their own regulatory body, and they have their own scope of practice, which they can at least know how much they can practice. So it's quite a challenge so far, being that coming from a country whereby we had our own body, regulatory body, we had a scope of practice, we had a clear career pathway. Coming here again now, it was a bit a challenge, but there's a light ahead of the tunnel, whereby now they have agreed that they will register other physician associate and clinical officers and clinical initiates from other countries. Mostly they had indicated around 15 countries, though they didn't limit other countries if you present your papers, and maybe, or they will do on a case by case individually. So far, with the help of GACOPA and IAPAE, we are moving far, hoping that by the end of the year, things will be well and there will be more light on the tunnel. But having a common nomenclature is very important, which means at least the other cadres will know who you are, what you do, and what you practice. And you see, like doctors, when they come here, they know they are doctors, so it's easier for them to start registering themselves coming to other countries. And like when you come as a physician, as a clinical officer or a clinical initiate, there's so many hindrances, and they always have so many questions. Even when they take maybe your transcript, they have to look into details before they maybe allow you to practice. Maybe if there will be any question, still I'll answer as we go interacting. We'll share more on how to register. We'll register with the physician associate here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Karani is a former branch official for the union, now practicing in the UK. We really appreciate. And coming back to the Global Association of Clinical Officers President, and also later we are also going to have the past president of IAPAE contribute to this. We have really heard how nomenclature can really affect us, and especially when we go beyond the borders and we want to work in other countries. So, Mr. President Austin, can you please inform us on what GACOPA is doing as far as getting a common nomenclature is concerned? I think you said we have more than 30 titles. Where do we find clinical officers and their analogs across the globe? What are the titles that we do have, and what are you doing as GACOPA, so that then we can have one title? When we go to other countries, they don't have to ask who we are. When we say, this is my title, then they will understand what I do. So over to you, President Austin, and then later, also we are going to have the past president of IAPAE also contribute to the same before we move to the next agenda. Welcome, Austin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm back again. That question the answer to that question, I'll just contribute on it a bit, but also the president of IAPAE will also add some salt to it. We have more than 30 titles in different countries, and just in summary, the most common titles that are used are the clinical officers, physician associates. It used to be physician assistants in some countries like the United States, and then physician associates, changed to physician associates. We also have medical assistants, and we also have assistant medical officers. So the medical assistants are so many, then we also have the clinical associates. So these titles it depends. In other countries, it is anchored in the law. It's anchored in the law, and also it's appreciated by the regulatory body in that country. In other countries, you will find the clinical officers or the physician associates are registered by different regulatory bodies. By different regulatory bodies, some are registered by the health professional councils in that country. Some are independently registered by the clinical officers. Of course, it's only Malaysia and Kenya that the clinical officers or the medical assistants have got their own regulatory body. But others, you'll find that in countries like even when we are doing our research, we have the PA presence in Philippines, but they are not regulated. They are not regulated by any. Burundi at one particular point, they were not regulated. Then again, they are regulated by the Ministry of Education, now Ministry of Health, but now the Health Professions Council. So what KUCOEngage does is that we look at, that is why most of the time you see KUCOEngage having conferences or having meetings, they carry along the people who make laws. That's the MPs, the legislature, the people who craft these laws, and we always target the people in that committee. In Botswana, you saw we had the legislative forum, which is a creation of we really want to bring these people who make law together so that they can really appreciate who we are and what we do, so that as we narrow down to have 2 or even 1 name, if possible, then we have to engage these different countries, because some of these countries, they do things on their own. It will take ages, maybe even to convince Malaysia to change from medical assistant to maybe physician associate or clinical officers for that. But it will really be easier, an easier path, if the COPA and the IAPAE work together with the different organizations and unions in different countries and associations to push the WHO and ILO to have the name clinical practitioners, so that as you use the word clinical practitioners, we know that a clinical practitioner from Malaysia is called a medical assistant, or it's called as assistant medical officers. So we've tried. Some countries, they are even trying to embrace now our profession. Like recently, I was in Zimbabwe, and I can report that after we met a full house committee of health of Parliament of Zimbabwe, they agreed that they will sponsor a bill that will insert the profession clinical officers into the Health Professions Council of Zimbabwe. A similar thing is also taking place in other countries, and that is what the COPA is doing, and we are not doing this alone. This is something that we are doing with the International Academy of Physician Assistant Educators, together with other relevant institutions. And I can confidently say that we have even reviewed our program for our 5th International Conference in Birmingham, where we are going to have a forum for legislators. We are going to try and invite chairs of health committees of different countries. We have sampled them, and we know the people who really attend. Some of them have been attending our conferences. Then from there, we will make a statement, and we will ensure that they appreciate what we do. And when they go back to their countries, they will have that kind of legislation that is needed for this cadre to be anchored in the law. And this we are doing as we try to push to narrow it down. We cannot have those 30 or 40 titles. It is not worth it. Let us reduce it, and that we are doing together with the IAPAE. We are doing together with the different organizations. We are engaging all the networks that we have, the unions and different countries where the field or this cadre has achieved a lot. Countries like Kenya, I can mention, have done a lot. Ghana, Malaysia have done a lot, and of course the United States. We have the numbers, because if you look at the numbers, United States alone have got close to 400,000 physician associates. And the 400,000 physician associates, Bangladesh has got close to 30,000, Kenya 30,000. So we have the numbers. We are closely, we are almost hitting 1 million in numbers. That is, if we don't add China, where we recently found out that they are also having equivalent of the clinical officers or physician associates. They are called the assistant doctors, and they are close to 1 million. Close to 1 million assistant doctors. And what they do, if you look at their curriculum, they do diagnosis management, but mostly they work in the rural areas within China. So that is what KUCOEngage is doing, and we always expect you people to strengthen us, give us the feedback that we need, and then as we move forward, because this cannot be done alone, it has to be done united together with all stakeholders and members. But for sure, we are trying to see into it to have that harmonization where we have even narrowed down to very few names, and of course taking clinical practitioners as that title that can be universally accepted, but then pushing countries to narrow down to names that even if there are names that even limit us. If you are called an assistant, it really limits us. It limits one person that you are an assistant to who. Those are the things we are trying to avoid. And as we really push, and we push from different corners, having conferences, meetings in different regions. We have one in Ethiopia. I know there's one will be in West Africa. Another one will be in India. Another one will be in the United States. So we're having this conversation in form of meetings like this. Then at the end of it, we will do the sensitization and we'll reach where we intended to reach. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, President Austin. And as we bring in the president, the former president, or the immediate past president of the IAPAE, Mr. Scott, maybe he can also address the question of what is the process of getting a common nomenclature? Who is this that prescribes this common nomenclature? What efforts has gone into that? And where are we as we stand today? So, Mr. Scott, hopefully you can be able to respond to those questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Austin, for your comments around the real powerful purpose of KUCOEngage. KUCOEngage is doing a wonderful job in bringing together our different collaborators and discussing with legislatures of different countries the recognition of our profession. So in addition to helping support IAPAE, I'm also a global researcher on the PA and CO education and workforce areas. And so we've been involved in several research papers, and a recent paper that was submitted to the Journal of the American Academy of Physician Associates identifies the 63 countries around the world and 5 US territories that have our comparable profession. And we've identified 35 unique country practice titles that are very similar to the definition of a clinical practitioner or a PA. And these 35 titles are around the world, and some countries have one title, and other titles are used in multiple countries. So the most common title is physician assistant, physician associate, or PA. That's in 25 different countries around the world. And the next most common title is the clinical officer, and that's in 16 countries, mostly found in Africa countries, on the continent of Africa. And then the next most common is the medical assistant or associate with 5 countries. And then thereafter, the remaining 30 titles have 2 countries that use that, or maybe 1 country that uses that title. So really the titles that are resonating the most around the world is the physician associate / assistant. And as Austin said, the United States is moving from physician assistant to the title physician associate. United Kingdom uses the title physician associate. India uses the title physician associate. There are some countries that still use physician assistant, such as Ghana or the Netherlands. And then clinical officer is the next most common. So we really feel that these 2 titles are what are resonating and coming to the surface. But it is important to have a global unifying term, a term that would unite all of us. And the proposal is the term clinical practitioner. And right now, there's only 1 country that has a type of advanced clinical practitioner in the United Kingdom. But I've done research to show around the world, clinical practitioner is not a title used anywhere else. There's 1 profession in the UK that uses that. Maybe our colleagues here have run into them or know them. But we feel that the title clinical practitioner can be a global title, a global term to represent all of us. And then countries would be supported to use a term that resonates, such as clinical practitioner, or a title within their country that makes sense. And we'd recommend the clinical officer, or physician associate. These 2 titles being the most common. Now, you asked about the process, Peterson, for the global title and who does this. Right now, there's no unifying body that declares a title must be used. There is the WHO's branch called the International Labor Organization. The International Labor Organization started to try to identify what professions exist in different countries and to create a statistical manual to demonstrate those titles. They didn't propose those titles, or they don't put forward those titles. They're simply collecting what titles exist in the different countries around the world. And so they then started collecting different titles in the International Labour Organization. They published this in the International Statistics of Occupations manual. And currently we're working on the 2008 manual, and the next manual is proposed to come out in 2028. So they're doing a review of current titles that exist around the world and capturing them in a systematic hierarchical order for statisticians to be able to document from each country what exists. And this is the way that we can then see global occupational practices around the world. So the PA working group was formed as a collaborative of international PA clinical officers to put forward a proposed title. This PA working group was with Kenya collaborators and with the US collaborators, Canada collaborators, and then other additional African collaborators joined, and those also from other European countries and from Australia and Oceania. So we have a global representation on this PA working group, and they've submitted a proposal to the International Labour Organization for the global term of clinical practitioner. Currently, you may be aware that the International Labour Organization has the term paramedical practitioner, which describes our clinical practice. And they only list the example titles of clinical officer and Feldshare. So we are proposing that paramedical practitioner does not fully describe us and groups us with paramedics who are in the ambulance and providing service in pre-hospital care. We are proposing that our group as clinical practitioners is then on par with the medical doctors and with the nurses, and therefore we would be clinical practitioners, and we would have then a subgroup called the physician associate / clinical officer. And we would propose that all other titles, the other 35 titles, also be listed under clinical practitioner to demonstrate that these countries have this healthcare provider, which falls in the category of clinical practitioner. And so we've been working with ILO. The PA working group has been submitting the proposals. There's another proposal and conversation coming up shortly to discuss this movement to clinical practitioner name. The next rollout will be 2028. So we're in advance now, 2025. We're looking 3 years now when this new International Standard of Classifications manual will come out from ILO. And we at that time are really pushing to have this global title, clinical practitioner, with all of our titles underneath it to represent the individual unique country aspect. As Mr. Austin said, is each country has developed their own title based on their needs, based on their nomenclature, based on their relevance, and these are legal legislative terms that are enacted by law. So countries would have to go through a change should they want to upgrade from a doctor assistant title to a clinical officer title so that it's reflected in their laws. As Thabo was saying earlier, in Botswana, Health Professions Bill is the title clinical officer, so that does exist. So educational programs that are training in their country should use that title of clinical officer, which is already in the legislature. That's an important aspect of following education and the legislature. So please, I hope that I've answered that question, Peterson. I'm very happy, and also wanted to turn over to my president, Nabani, if she has further things to add around that.
Thank you. You have. We can also invite the president, as you have said, to also add to the topic.
Thank you so much, Scott. You have covered everything. However, we just have to note that as much as we have the different names, it may be a challenge for us to dictate to countries to say, you have to adopt this name. However, if we can have an umbrella term, which if I go to US or wherever, I can say I am a clinical practitioner, that should still be good because every country, they have a reason why they chose that particular name. But as we have conversation and we continue having conversations, maybe we may narrow down to those 3 names that we are proposing. However, as it is now, we are not replacing any country's naming. The clinical practitioner is just an umbrella term, so that if I go to UK, I can say I'm a clinical practitioner, and then they can accept that they know my profession, since it will be a global term, which will be in the books of WHO or ILO. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lumbani. Thank you, President Scott, President Lumbani, President Scott, and President Gakopa. It feels very nice when you are calling presidents and hosting presidents. So I'll keep calling you presidents. Now I want to hand over to my co-moderator, Mary Boniface, who is now going to take us into the issues of curriculum and the harmonization, and also how that contributes to the whole aspect of the globalization and enabling the clinical officers and analogs to transcend borders and work in other jurisdictions. So Mary Boniface, you can take over from there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panelists. To the attendees, I want to remind us to use the chat box to continue weighing in your opinions and also ask questions so that we can raise them at the end of the discussion. So we now need to move to the next area of the discussion, which involves the harmonization of curriculum. And this is quite an heavy one because, you know, we know that the different countries have quite huge differences along how they train clinical officers. And this has recently been a discussion. And actually earlier in the year, in January, ourselves within East Africa converged in Mombasa with our counterparts from Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, trying to talk about these issues of curriculum harmonization. So we need to look into, you know, what are the variations, the major ones, across the different countries, especially, you know, the duration of training, the depth of training, you know, what are the benefits of having a standardized curriculum, and of course, the challenges that we face up to including the legal enablers for us to be able to see our curriculums involved. So to start us off, I would want us to look into what happened into the East African meeting before we look into the bigger picture. And I think I will start with you at Austin, just to tell us what was involved in that particular session and what outcomes are we waiting as, you know, we look towards following the whole discussion to the end. Austin.
Thank you so much once again, Mary Boniface, our national treasurer in the union here in Kenya. We initiated the harmonization process for East Africa, and I believe other regions are also following that. And of course, IAPAE is doing the harmonization through the loop for internationally. So how it started here in East Africa is we really felt that our counterparts, who are the medical officers, are finding it easy to cross into these countries within East Africa and work seamlessly without any sweat when it comes to registration. You find a doctor, a medical doctor from, a medical officer from Uganda, within a day or so registering to practice in the other country, because they have one database and they always do inspection to all those internship centers, to facilities, to universities, and they have that harmonization framework that has already been approved by the East Africa Sectoral Council of Ministers. Of course, the ministers for health in different East African countries, and finally it was assented to by the East African heads of states in their annual meeting that they always have. So the process is very long, and we had just started the process. At first, we held our first conference, our first meeting in workshop in Kigali, Rwanda, that was hosted by the Allied Health Professions Council of Rwanda. Then from there, we incorporated other cadres because we were told that we can incorporate other cadres so that we do this united and jointly. Of course, when we held our meeting in Mombasa, which was opened by the Principal Secretary of Health and closed by the Minister for Health, it was agreed that each cadre will, we were split into different cadres, but then after that, we had already started the draft. The harmonization tool that is not so much different from what the doctors did, but it's a process. So there is a stage where we will have another meeting in Kampala, Uganda. Then from there, the draft will be subjected to the East Africa Sectoral Council of Ministers, and it will follow the right protocol. And finally, it will be signed and agreed. And from there, things will be harmonized. Like you will realize that in Tanzania, the clinical officers there don't do internship, but there are people who train in Tanzania and come back to Kenya. Some train in Uganda, come back to Kenya. Some training in Kenya, going back to Tanzania, and vice versa. But then it's only Kenya that internship is done, and South Sudan. And you realize that some countries don't have the degree in clinical medicine. Some have the degrees, some only have the diploma, and some even have masters and PhD. So this is a process that is being handled by both the stakeholders and even the unions and the associations of different countries under our cadre are all involved. So I think that one for East Africa, Madam Mary Boniface, that's what I wanted to share as per what we've done. And I'm very sure Mr. Peterson Washira, who also attended that meeting, will add something into it later on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Austin. And as we look further into the discussion, I would want to give this chance to the current president, IAPAE, Madam Lumbani. In your experience, could you just kindly help us, get a bigger picture of what, different countries have been doing in terms of the curriculum? And what have you learned in your experience as you walk in this journey? Because I know you've worked with several countries looking into the curricula of clinical medicine. Madam Lumbani, please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll start by telling my story. I'm originally from Malawi. I graduated as a clinical officer in Malawi, came to South Africa. Before I could practice, the HPCSA, which is a medical council, did not allow me to practice unless they proved me that I was comparable to the clinical associates in South Africa. So I had to write the national exam. And after the national exam, I had to work practically. And after they had assessed me, the universities had assessed me, they saw that I was worthy being employed in South Africa. Now, when we started GACOPA, that was a chapter in Rwanda, which said we need to map out how we are comparable, how we are similar, how our skills can be related to another country. Then we sat together, we started mapping on paper and Excel. The countries that were represented by then, it was Kenya, South Africa, Malaysia, US, and I can't remember the other country. We were a few of us, we started mapping. However, that was the same time that we had a colleague who said we can do this online, and lots of us, we can just work together, bringing our curriculums, and then we can map how we are comparing to the outcomes to the EPAs. Then that's where Loop was featured in. So far, I'm glad to say that we have managed, the past president, IAPAE, Mr. Scott, who also highlighted on that, we have been able to see that most of the programs, they are cross-cutting themes that we are similar. For instance, if you compare the diploma versus diploma, or sometimes even the degree, you'll see that some of them, they'll do anatomy and physiology, whilst the others, they are doing maybe for a longer duration or a shorter duration. But at the end of the day, we are seeing that there is a lot of similarities. Now, what does that mean to us as a profession? It simply means that if we can come together and be able to agree on what are the competencies that we should be looking at, that would assist us. That's one of the visions for IAPAE, to be that global organization that can help different organizations to say, here, if you want to start maybe a program, these are the competencies that you should be looking at. These are the modules, for instance, that you need to consider, because we're seeing that on a global level, these are the outcomes that are more crucial in terms of somebody qualifying as a PA analog. So those are the things that we can be looking at, especially in terms of the loop, which stands for learning outcomes. Mr. Scott can add more on what are the main findings, because he's well versed with the loop, and he is actually the country representative of the loop program. He's actually the manager for the loop program currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Lumbani. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mary Boniface. Appreciate it. Yes, the Loop is a curriculum mapping project where we are now trying to map example curricula of each country that has our clinical practitioner. And I'll start using that global term, clinical practitioner. And we're very thankful to Mary Shostark. Many of you may know her as a very active educator in PA in the US. She, following the GACOPA conference in Rwanda with other PAs, other clinical officers, really got organized in finding this online software tool, which is provided to us by Dr. Olaf Allers. And he's a medical educationalist and anesthesiologist by training in Germany at the University of Charité and Brandenburg Medical School. And they are supporting the provision of Loop. Loop is L-O-O-O-P. It has 3 O's: learning opportunities, objectives, outcomes platform. And it's an online location for mapping curricula. And once we have courses mapped, we can identify these courses relating to the WHO global competencies. And the WHO global competencies were produced in 2023, and they are specifically for paramedical practitioners, as the current designation by International Labour Organization defines us. Domains that make up these global competencies. And therefore, education programs would want to map their courses to these domains, and we can see how much our programs are being covered in these 6 domains. And may I share my screen, Ms. Boniface? Is that fine if I have the capabilities to do that?
Yes, Scott, that's fine for now, but I'll bring you back at some point to help us look into the challenges that are ahead of us as we try to harmonize these curricula. Thank you. I know by now our colleagues Maskuji and Dennis, you've been, and Dennis mentioned about the training to some extent, but from what you've gathered so far and what is happening in the UK, what do you think about the training? Probably we can start with you, Dennis, and then Maskuji can weigh in.
Before you come to me, maybe Mr. Scott wanted to maybe share his screen. I don't know if you cut him short before you finished.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis and Mary. Yes, I just wanted to show on the screen now how we've mapped to the 6 global competency framework domains. You can see the first domain is people-centeredness, which has 19% mappings from our curriculum project. And decision-making domain has 22% mapping.
Yeah, maybe Mr. President, it has not come to our screen. We are seeing it behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're seeing it behind
Nelson,
me. Oh,
I
that's
don't know how
interesting.
you can be able to help.
Oh, look at this. This is an interesting view. Okay. It may cause an inconvenience. Okay,
We
my
have our
apologies.
IT technician. I don't know if we can assist you so that we can have it on screen. This is very important information.
Okay, I'm just trying to share the screen again. It said something about permission, but let's see if I can share as a large screen. Okay. But what as we're trying to see if I can share my screen, what we've found is that we are having good coverage of our global mappings to the WHO competency frameworks, and anywhere from 11% to a domain up to 22% of a domain is covered. This is showing that the clinical practitioner in each country is mapping to the recommended competencies by WHO. And what we're hoping is that from this information, we can propose a clinical practitioner global competency framework specifically for our clinical practitioners. And as we gather training and curricula around the world, we'll be able to also present a curriculum recommended outline. And this is what then would be a model for clinical education around the world for our clinical practitioners. And then countries and education programs to look to this curriculum outline and work their curriculum to fall in with these outline suggestions. Because we're able to map across the world and find out what are the identifiers for our commonalities. I think we should continue with Dennis now, and let me see if in the background I could try to share my screen, and we'll come back to this graph that I wanted to share. Thank you, Ms. Boniface.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, common curriculum is very important, and we can't just stop to emphasize on the same, because you know when we are registering with the physician association in the UK, one of the things they want to look at the number of hours covered either in the clinical and the class. So you can imagine if we had a common curriculum and common units, it could have been much easier, right? Because now they will have to ask you for your transcript, scrutinize it, and see if you achieve the number of exact number of hours they want. And if we add a common curriculum cutting across the global, then they couldn't be asking all those questions. Instead, they know Kenya, this is the curriculum they have, and which is same as the UK. So they could only go to the legal framework only, and then you are registered like that. But for now, they have to ask for your transcript, and in the transcript still they have they have to tell you that you have to be sure that, like now they want like 3,150 academic hours, and then they want 1,400 clinical hours, which even when we come back to our own country, Kenya, there is a problem with the number of hours, because there was a variation of different transcripts, others having 4,000 academic hours and others having less than 2,000 academic hours, which means even us who still have our own curriculum as a clinical officer in our own country, see there's issue of standardization which hasn't taken place fully. Because when you get that, you get a transcript from Kenya, you just take a sample of different transcripts, and then at the end of the day, you get that there's a variation of different academic hours, and all this they are from KMTC, which means then still we need to put more emphasis on this, on the common curriculum, starting from individual countries going up to global. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Dennis. Welcome, Maskuji.
Yes, sir.
And maybe Mary, as Maskuji comes in, I'm interested to know to know which ones do not fit. Is it a diploma? If you had a higher diploma, does it add to the hours? If you have a degree, does that also add to the hours as they respond? Thank you.
If I respond to that, Peterson, even the diploma themselves, because most of the colleagues have maybe interacted with, and they have shared with their transcript with me to just go through them, and because they are those ones who are here as clinical officers, and they're trying to register with the physician associate. And the first step is very essential, is a crucial step, which if you fail, then you can't continue with the registration process. And most of the time, there are some of the diploma in clinical medicine, some of them have more than 4,000 hours, and others have less than 2,000 hours. And all of them, they are from KMTC, but different KMTC campuses. So I think there is that issue of standardization, which is still has to be looked into, so that by the end of the day, this curriculum is the same, should be the same from individual country going upwards to the international level. Did you did I answer your question, Peterson?
Yeah, partly. I also wanted to hear for the BSc, but I also think Maskuji being a degree clinical officer, he can also probably be able to respond to the same.
Okay, thank you, Chairman and Mary Bonfet. I think maybe if I can be able to share the criteria, I think that will be able to answer the question. And also, I hope Scott and Lumbani, as well as Austin, will be able to take notes so that they can see how to align in order for the future, how they can be able to harmonize this. So for one to be a physician associate here in the UK, and you're coming from a different country, you didn't train here in the UK, the criteria number one, you have to have a qualification as either a clinical officer or any equivalent to physician associate. Number two of that qualification, then you must have trained in a country which there are selected countries that the UK have listed, that they recognize them, that they are training clinical officers or physician associate or physician assistant. So you should be in one of those countries, coming from one of those countries. Number three, your qualification must have been awarded by an institution which is recognized by the accrediting institution in that country. Like, for example, if it's a university, the university must be accredited by that country and recognized. The other criteria is criteria number 4, of which your qualification and education and training must be based on scientific evidence, medicine. And criteria number 5, your program study must be a minimum of 2 academic years. So that means during your training, it should be a minimum of 2 academic years to complete. Then another criteria they have, now here comes the number of hours of which your study should contain approximately 3,150 hours of time in education and training. And as Karan is saying, that is where the discrepancy is coming. We realized that those who trained, I think from 2014, I'm not sure, but there is a group, the latest group, which are graduating with diploma from Kenya Medical Training Colleges. They actually have this number of hours in their transcript when you add them up. But those who trained before that, then the number are becoming less. And you can realize that there is no difference in the training that has come in since then. The training has remained to be the same. So I guess that's where, again, people are having challenges, especially those who finished or graduated earlier when this number of hours changes was effected. The other criteria is your program or study should be at one, must have involved in person clinical experience, which must have been overseen and approved by institution you attend. And this is, I can relate this to kind of internship or what we call, is it attachment? There is normally a training we normally do, and they are looking for 1,400 hours. And I think the last criteria is that during your training and your education, you must have covered this area, that is general practice, acute and emergency medicine, general medical specialties, pediatrics, surgery, gynecology, and mental health. So if then we can be able to look into that criteria and other criterias across the global, so that we can come up with a one kind of criteria that is acceptable worldwide, it will help when it comes to these registration processes. Like what Scott and Lumbani was saying, that at times it might be difficult to have a normal, to have one name accepted in each country, but we can come up with one name which is accepted globally, and this name, under it, there is this other, subnames of which we are talking about: physician associate, physician assistant, clinical officer, and so on. And the scope of training is more of the same, or is now it has been standardized in a manner that it is accepted globally. And to add on that, at least we also have a task to ensure that this profession is well understood within the system of health, because we having also a challenge that, like, let's say here in the UK, they don't understand what is the role of a physician associate. As much as they're also trying that to be independent, but the role within the NHS is also not clear. But through these bodies, we can be able to come up with a crossing, a clear scope of practice, and the role of which it will be well understood within the health system. I think those are some of the challenges which I believe Kenya was a bit a challenge, and I think we managed to sort it out. Here it is a challenge, and I believe in so many other countries it is also a challenge, because it's being seen as a competition between doctors, clinical officers, and physician associates. There is kind of competition, and maybe just to add again, they are coming to pin or to fight using one line, and this is the line of training. That is where they are using, that's where their bullet is. They want to use our training to be less, or to be not as to the required standard for us to practice or to prescribe. So I think those are some of the things I can be able to share with you. Probably if there's anything else, maybe I can be able to chip in later. Thank you. Mary Boniface, back to you.
Maybe before Mary Boniface takes over, I can add some things on what Maskuji have talked about. One of it about, like, now when you look at nursing, in every country, they have standardized it as per the country's need. But at the end of the day, this person graduates as a nurse, And this nurse can still apply to work in any country outside their original trained country, maybe registered country, as a nurse still. Like now, for example, let's go like in Kenya, when they train as a general nursing. When you come here in the UK, they train in subspecialties. We have adult nursing, pediatric nursing, mental health nursing, like that. But at the end of the day, still, if they want to work outside the UK or want to work outside Kenya, they won't be stopped because of the issue of the curriculum, because they have a standardized curriculum for nursing, which is globally recognized. And then now, individual countries, they have tailored it down to be fit their own wants, as each countries have their own medical wants and what they want as a nurse to provide while they are giving care to their patients. But still, this same nurse can register and work outside their country and still will be recognized without having any age or any barrier for them to work outside. So if we have a common curriculum, which is standardized for everyone, and then now individual countries will tailor-made it to fit their own countries. And then the issue is on the number of hours, which that's what you had asked me. Yeah, it's true what Maskuja said. I talked to one of HOD, and what I was told is that those who have graduated late, the 2000, 2004, 2024, 2025, well, maybe from 2010 upwards, that they fit the hours. But there was an issue still with most of those ones who have interacted. You find them here, they recently maybe graduated, but when they go to pick their transcript, it shows still a variation of hours, which we don't have. I expect that if it's KMTC, then if you're doing a diploma, you should when you're picking your transcript, you should have a standard number of hours covered in the class, because it's the same curriculum which is covered either be it in KMTC or private KMTC, should be the same, should be standard. Then the practical hours, this is the internship, because the transcript will cover the clinical hours which you cover during the clinical practice, and the classes which will be covered in the transcript. And then now we have the 1,400 which should be covered by the internship. And now that's why another issue comes in, because we don't have any official document showing that, yes, I covered the 1,400 hours in my internship. That's the clinical place after graduating from college. So we should have maybe also another document to show that this person covered this, because that's where the nurses hits us very strong, because when they're doing their international registration, they have a standard document which they use. So when they want to apply maybe to the US will just contact the NCK, and then NCK will just provide what's wanted without even having any barrier in between. So that's some of the issues which, be it even also in a degree, the same as it has the same issue, because I also have a degree, and some of those ones have a degree, they also have a variation of hours which are not standard, because I expect all the universities offering degree should have a standard number of hours which should be covered, the minimum number of hours which should be covered by every university for one to graduate. Maybe if there's anything else, I'll add on as we move on. Back to Mary.
Thank you so much, Dennis and Maskuji. That was quite enlightening, and there are so many people interested in that discussion. And please, Gordon and team, allow me to give you the opportunity to ask the questions a little later. And as you can see on the screen, we are seeing the WHO nature of global competency framework mappings, so that you continue enlightening yourself on what is required. So just before I go back to Scott, I know George, who was also our panelist, now in, and Katibu, I would want to welcome you. And while you come in, I would want you to touch on issues of curriculum and especially further the discussion on what's happening in East Africa. Earlier, Austin weighed in, but you can also mention something about that. Welcome, George.
Hi, Mary, and good evening. I believe I'm loud, if you can confirm.
Yes, you are.
Sorry for coming in late. Kindly, I will request that probably you repeat the question for me, because I think I was struggling with the network where I am.
Yes, we are having a discussion around curriculum harmonization. I know this is an area you've really participated in. And it's about the second thing about that, way into the global picture.
Okay, thank you about that, Mary. And let me appreciate my co-panelists for being available, at least to start us off. And for your contribution. I think I joined when Maskujo was talking about what is there. And I must say, maybe the key issues that we are looking at when we talk about globalization is true, that we consider harmonization of key issues. And one of the issues which I believe that Professor Scott must have highlighted is the issue of common nomenclature, which has been a thorn in the flesh for so long. And therefore, I believe that that's one of the issues that we are pushing for. And once we achieve that, then it gives us a platform of oneness. Because as you hear today, some of those who are joining this discussion today, some of the title terminologies that we are using are alien to them, and they might not be knowing. But as we do that, I think the key thing here is to be known, and to be known what you're doing, but you must also be known for what you are. The what you are is now what you're asking about the curriculum, the harmonization, and of which it is a very wide topic. And it is very interesting, some of the engagement, when you engage, you feel that some of the country are feeling that they are better where they are, or states, they are feeling better where they are, and they don't want to adjust. But at the end of the day, I think when he says that we have been engaging, we are fostering, realizing that it must start somewhere. We are now working on harmonizing one for the East African country that's in the African continent, so that then once we do that, we should be able to have a similar entry criteria, which can be able to be accepted in the countries that are within the East African region. And also going forward, the training, that's what now involves what you cover while you want to become a clinical officer, physician assistant, and the like, then must also be standardized. And that's what we are working for. We accept where one country have excelled in one area and the other one need also to cooperate, so that we are able to actually be able now to say we are talking in one language. That discussion is ongoing, and I must say, in the East African, it's only the medical officer who have managed to do that. And they have come up with a common regulation where even the universities that trains those cadres are recognized, and they have a similar way of acknowledging, or rather accrediting, those who join their training institution and what they do in a respective institution and what require a university to train medicine. They come up with a number of things which are key issues that inform, I call that, that informs, the kind of things that are supposed to be harmonized. So having said that, it is what we are also fast tracking as the clinical officers, believing that once we have achieved that, we also need to propose the same to the African region, Asian region, the Western, Eastern, and ensure that we are able to now have a common curriculum. But before then, as we talk about that, I have heard very well the articulation in terms of the hours that need to be covered, but the what must also be there so that there is a standard agreement in what is required. I will not mention specific, but I've said that different countries have different title, and they have also different approach to the training, like who approves the training for medical staff, who does the training for what level. And then once those laws, sometimes they contradict, it makes it so difficult for you to make progress. But also when I talk about the regulations and who approves the curriculums for training, you find that in our country, we have a different framework, and then you find that Uganda has a different framework. Like in our country, we have peer regulations. But in Uganda, you have an umbrella regulations where you have a one body regulating clinical officer among other cadre, except the medical officers and the doctors. The doctors in that category. So and then unfortunately, sometimes that make the bureaucracy of approval of document also make it so difficult. So when we move, the earlier we start this discussion across the group to be ensure that we can be able to harmonize this, the better, so that then a realignment is there, because when you meet, there is storming stage where you are able not to agree to each other. But yes, I think I've responded to the question of what we are doing in terms of curriculum harmonization and also the practice. As we talk about curriculum, we move also discuss about harmonization of the practice. What is it will enable you once you have trained, yes, you are accepted here, what will enable you to move along, or rather move to do trans-country or rather movement between the countries. Asanteni Mary, I hope I have responded to your question.
Yes, Judge, thank you for that. We'll come back to you in a short while. And as we summarize on the curriculum, I would want to bring back Scott to talk about the challenges, and then also touch on what different professional bodies can be able to overcome the challenges so that we can achieve the matter of curriculum harmonization. Scott?
Thank you again, Boniface, and very nice to have George on the call. Thank you, George, for your additional comments. And I appreciate what Dennis was saying earlier, is that each country needs to start looking within for harmonizing their own clinical practitioner curriculum. It is interesting that KMTC is offering more than 68 campuses, if I have that correct. You'll correct me for this diploma program, but yet they offer a different number of hours at each training site. This is an area where Kenya needs to bring together for the transcripts to reflect a common number of hours, which is then probably set in the national curriculum framework. So really what we're learning is that each country needs to set a national curriculum framework or outline that would demonstrate the requirements that programs would need for a diploma graduate or a bachelor graduate. We are recognizing many countries are moving to a bachelor level as the entry level for professional practice, and therefore the curriculum outline should provide institutions with the minimum requirements to set for education and training for that bachelor level. And that minimum requirement would have a minimum number of total hours a minimum number of didactic hours, a minimum number of clinical hours. And therefore, a graduate from Kenya at one of these institutions following this curriculum outline would then be able to produce a transcript which would demonstrate having met those recommendations. And when they submit to such as GMC or other countries that are allowing internationally trained PAs to apply, they would have met that standard. So I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's giving me some insights too. IAPAE's role through the Loop curriculum mapping project is to gather the empirical evidence of what is being taught, of what the content is, of what the different systems, the human body, of what the level we are meeting the WHO domains. And I think some additional information we need to start collecting now is the number of clinical hours of each program and the number of didactic hours of each program. Because what we as IAPAE want to do is we want to propose a global curriculum framework. So we're going to say from gathering evidence around the globe, here is what a global PA, clinical officer student, needs to meet. And once we recommend that outline, countries could take that outline and say, okay, within Kenya, we now want our bachelor's degree to meet this standard. And then countries internally will start setting that standard. Those that graduate will now be able to say we meet the country standard, which is now matching the global standard. And I think it's also important as we start to standardize this that we're not making exactly the same curriculum from country to country. Obviously, countries will need to vary their curriculum for local healthcare needs, but what we're providing is an overall outline, an overall framework to meet. And then each individual curriculum, the training of the curriculum, the teaching of the curriculum can of course be very dependent on the country or the region. So that we are united, but we're also unique, and we're also fit for purpose for the country where we're going to be practicing. I mean, medicine is common. You know, 60% of medicine is quite common around the world. A femur is a femur in every country. So those basics of what we educate are standard. 60% of an education will be very similar. But then you'll have 40% of the education that might be regionally relevant, and you might have 20% of the education that might be very locally relevant. I hope I've added some more to the conversation. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much. That's very rich, and I believe we've all learned from that session. So we move on to the next session, which involves the international labor market. And I would want to bring back Peterson to take us through this. Peterson.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all who have contributed to that marvelous discussion. You have really steered as well. So we have looked at common nomenclature. We have looked at having a common title. How is it going to assist us? We have also looked at harmonization of the curriculum as one of the enablers. I think those are the two enablers of international recognition and also internationalization of labor. But now that we have looked at that and looked at the challenges and what we are doing, and I think we can agree that the future is bright. We are making steps. They may be slow, but we are heading towards a brighter future in terms of ourselves being able to work in other jurisdictions. But now coming to the internationalization of labor market, we just want to understand which countries can we be able to work in. I think we have already heard about the East African region and the harmonization push from the highest level of governance, that is the President's caucus, which has enabled that to be true, that in future we will be able to work in the different countries, I think the 8 countries that form the East African region, without having to undergo some more exams or other bottlenecks that usually find in other countries. So I don't know if this is the same for the South African region who are with us in this meeting, and they may also know about the other regions. But also, we will also want to know about the global environment. And I think the presidents that we have here for GACOPA and for IAPAE will also give us a view of globally which countries allow our analogs to work, whether regional or continental-wise or globally. So I want to start with the Vice President of the Clinical Medicine Union, Clinical Officers Union in Botswana, Bwana Tabo. You can tell us, as clinical officers from Botswana, which countries are you able to work in currently? And as an inspiration or aspiration, which countries or continents do the clinical officers in Botswana aspire to work in?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think as of now, we don't have any clinical officer or doctor assistant who has cut across borders to go and work in a foreign country. Reason being that, like I have mentioned, here the profession is still at an infancy stage, so we are still trying to set up ourselves. And but of note of that, we have had our members who have gone for training, extra training, maybe specialization in other countries. Like one of our members, who is also our Secretary General, she went to study in Tanzania. She did dermatology there. When she got there, her transcripts were recognized in Tanzania. The doctor assistant qualification was recognized, and she was admitted to study higher diploma in dermatology. Already now, we are also having our members, some of them, although they have gone into MBBS in our neighboring countries like Zambia, South Africa. We also have some who have gone to the level of studying for masters. Like I remember one of our members has gone to do masters in public health in Zambia. I believe is it at Eden University. So as far as working abroad, we don't have any of our members who have worked outside the country, but of course they do have aspirations to work outside. Like there was a time that when that communication for the UK was released to say that clinical officers from Africa will be allowed. The first question they asked us was, are we also allowed to apply? But we did share with them the link to go and check. Unfortunately, because of the profession is here, new here, I'm sure that even UK, they are not aware of the profession here in Botswana. This is something that as we move ahead, we shall push and ensure that clinical officers in Botswana are able to work outside. But of note of that, I should also emphasize that here in Botswana, we have clinical officers who are coming from other countries who are working here. But the only challenge that we have is that although they are recognized, they are licensed to practice here, they don't have any defined scope of practice that they are currently using. And I have tried to get in hold of them. Although I managed to get to one touch with the one lady who has been registered as a clinical officer anesthetist. Right now, she's employed in one of the private hospitals in Botswana. And from the information that I was gathering from her, she was telling me that she has other colleagues who are anesthetists from countries like Zambia, Kenya. We have Kenyans who are working here in anesthesia. Zimbabwe, we have some clinical officers who are working here. So the information, we haven't really got the information as to how much of them are here, but I can acknowledge that indeed we are having some clinical officers who have come from other countries who are practicing and working in Botswana. But there's something that we are not quite sure of. We are not even sure which scope they are using. So I think the last time I went to the register, we inquired about this information, and we even found that some of them who are registered here, clinical officers here, that are regarded as medical officers, but that's something that we are here to get verification on. And like I was saying, all in all, I can say that we are shaping our profession, and I believe maybe touching on the issue of training, this is something that as the government through the Ministry of Health are in the process to start rolling out the national examinations for clinical officers. Even training any institution that will want to train clinical medicine in Botswana, they have to align to what other countries or the international to what is there internationally. So I believe I will end there.
Okay, thank you, Vice President. Let's go to Mr. Austin Odor. Mr. Austin Odor has
Yeah,
really traveled across Africa. And I know that he may understand between the different regions where clinical officers can be able to work, either with some of the bottlenecks and where they can work even without having to undergo further exams or evaluation. And then after we will come to the past president of the IAPAE, who I also know has worked in the different jurisdictions and can also be able to give us some insight into the same. So, Mr. Austin, proceed.
Mr. Chair, I just want to pick from where Sab has left. Namibia has got the same issue as Botswana, where you find the law of Namibia, but institution Namibia officer. Just as the same as Botswana. Botswana with training clinical
Chair, I don't know whether I'm the one struggling. You can moderate. I don't know. He's struggling. Come out clear.
Yeah, Austin, I think you have lost your network once again.
He can maybe switch off his.
You can. You can find some better network.
Okay.
Yes, Austin.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Are you getting me now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, let me just summarize, so because I see I have issues with the network. I was just saying that some of these countries where I've visited, like Namibia and Botswana, they have clinical officers in the law, and that is why we keep on tagging along the members of parliament who make laws, and mostly in the health committee. So, like in Namibia, you will find the clinical officers in Namibia are only ophthalmologists. And five anesthetists. So the rest, around 120, are ophthalmologists. They call themselves clinical officer ophthalmologists. But if you look at it very well, you'll find out of the 112 who are employed by the government, majority of them, 60% of these clinical officers ophthalmologists trained outside Namibia. Okay, all of them trained outside Namibia, but 60% of them are Namibians who went to Kenya, who went to Kenya Medical Training College, who went to Zambia. Some of them went to Malawi, and they trained as ophthalmologists, including Uganda, and then they went back to Namibia. This happened because the issue that you always see that agreement, MOU, bilateral agreement between one country and another. The remaining ones, which are 40%, are non-Namibians who are now Namibians who went there to work and became citizens. That's the same thing that is happening in Botswana. So what happens is that a case of Botswana, why you see there are so many non-Botswana citizens who are trained, who are working there, you will find even teachers there. You will find even apart from teachers, engineers, majority of them are from Kenya and these other countries. So during that bilateral talk, I think between the president, Daniel Arap Moi, and Festus Mogae, who was the then president of Botswana, Kenya and Botswana agreed that Kenya will be sending skilled workers in the name of teachers, in the name of nurses, in the name of clinical officers, all those. So at that time, you can remember even the former member of parliament, I think used to be the minister for local government, Karisa Maita, was also part of that team that was negotiating, and he was in the government. So he's the one who encouraged that at least even clinical officers can be there, because at that time, even consultant anesthetists were not there. There were very few. So the clinical officer anesthetists who have been running the anesthesia program in Kenya for years had to be sent to those countries. And that's what necessitated the two countries to add the clinical officers into their act or into their law, becoming law. So those clinical officers had to be licensed by the Health Professions Council of Botswana and Namibia. So once they did that, now the clinical officers there will now be licensed and they be called clinical officers. But what happens is that the country did not train them, so they had to import. So the importation or looking for support from different countries continued until I think it's something that is still happening. So these are areas that at least now when the doctor assistants in Botswana are now starting to train them, it's the strengthening and also the collaboration, and the reason even why we took the conference there, we really want them also to be accepted in other countries, just like they accept other people to also work in those countries. Remember, even the two countries that I'm mentioning, it is only Namibia and Botswana in mainland Africa that the citizens there can go to the United Kingdom without a visa. And when I talk of United Kingdom, I talk of England, we talk of there are those countries. It's not just one country. So it could be applied to them for who are working, and the nursing. I'm told even Bochikanelo College that the COPA has partnered with is offering the nursing and business assistant courses, and it becomes very easy for their graduates to go and work even in the United Kingdom without a lot of paperwork. Now, coming back to Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has no clinical officer. They have clinical officers, yes. They are around 150. But if you look at why Zimbabwe was listed by the General Medical Council, remember Zimbabwe is among the few countries in Asia, and I can say in Africa, where the medical doctors will easily go and work in United Kingdom without a lot of paperwork. Their training, and again, the way they have used the British model, and that's the reason why I think the clinical officers in Zimbabwe, who unfortunately were nurses, and now went for a 2-year training course, are recognized by the General Medical Council. So what happens is that for one person to go and work, or even a clinical officer from Kenya here to go and work in South Africa, just as the IAPAE president was saying, yes, you will submit your papers, you'll have to do an exam. If they're satisfied, then they'll give you a license, maybe a temporary license. Clinical officers going to Botswana, you will get your license, and the same as Namibia. In West Africa, because the East Africa, we are trying to harmonize around those 8 to 9 countries where we'll be having one way of harmonizing issues. West Africa, in Ghana and in Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, they are also having that. They have tried that harmonization work, but now to the institutions, so that they do their training as per the West Africa. There are around 4 countries, but you can work as a physician assistant in Liberia, and you can still work in Ghana. What we are not sure, and what we are trying to maybe see if it's practical, if a Kenyan can go to Ghana or a Ghanaian can come to Kenya. Of course, a Ghanaian can come to Kenya and can easily get that temporary license to work. In Malaysia, there's a time they needed more medical assistants. They have their own board and they have their own regulatory body. So it is through their board that one can come after looking at the curriculum, and then they can accept. In the Philippines, I've not been there, but with the interactions that we have with the people, Philippines are in dire need of physician assistants or physician associates. Let me use that. But now they are accepting physician associates who are from the United States and the United Kingdom or Europe, who can easily, they go there and they work with missionaries and all and NGO. They get that temporary license. Puerto Rico really is in their need of physician associates, but then they use the US model. So once you are a PA in the US, registered by the NCTPA or PA certified, you can easily work there. But then within Africa, just as I've mentioned, it's a process. In other countries, it is very easy. Like in Kenya, I don't think it will take you a whole month to get a license to practice as a clinical officer if you are a PA. And Scott is here. Scott will tell me that clinical officer. And I've seen Professor Maria Merkel from the United States got a license to work in Ghana as a PA, but that was after doing exams. I don't know if Scott did exam with the Clinical Officers Council, maybe he'll answer that. But these are different in each country. It's really different in each country. Each country has got its own way of doing things. Just like I've said, maybe you'll go to Tanzania, you'll not do an exam. You'll go to Botswana, you'll not do an exam. Maybe you'll give that license. So I think with working in different countries, I don't think. And again, I know that the team that is in the UK, once you get license as PAs, it will cut across in Europe. You can work in Germany, you can work in the Netherlands, you can work in I think Ireland, if not Ireland, then Northern Ireland, and then it may cut across to other countries, but that is what even the NCCPA is doing. Next week we are having a meeting with the NCCPA where they are trying to come up with a way that they can allow PAs from other countries to work there. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Austin. And as we welcome Mr. Scott, Nelson, please note the questions and summarize the questions so that once we are done with the next agenda, we can reply to some of the questions. So, Mr. Scott, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair Peterson. Thank you, Austin, for that nice deliberation. There are definite countries that are allowing internationally qualified PAs to apply to see about registration and work. And so we've heard that United Kingdom, December 13, 2024, has officially recognized their own PAs under the General Medical Council, and at the same time, they're now going to recognize internationally trained PAs to apply for that process. We hear Dennis and his colleague there are doing that process of application. Israel is also now a country that has officially recognized their own PAs, and they are also now going to recognize internationally trained PAs. And they have on their official website a process for application, internationally trained PAs to apply and work in Israel. The Netherlands also has for many, many years recognized their own PAs, and they are now and have been accepting internationally trained PAs to register and work in the Netherlands. And Kenya, of course, has for more than a century recognized their clinical officers within their own country with their clinical officer council, and they also do recognize internationally trained PAs to be registered. I am one of them. I did approach the council, and I provided my credentials, I provided my qualifications, I provided my transcripts. I met with the council. They allowed me to sit for an exam. So I did sit for an oral and a written exam with the Clinical Officers Council of Kenya, and I was registered then as a clinical officer. And also in South Africa does allow internationally trained PAs to submit application to the Health Professions Council of South Africa. They will consider your qualifications, your transcript, your diplomas, your practice in your own country, and they will make a decision to determine whether you meet the criteria to sit for the Clinical Associate National Exam, which is administered by the National Clinical Associate Academic Team of the 3 universities doing the training. Myself and Ms. Lumbani sit on that NCAT team. We help prepare the national exam, and any foreign qualified PAs would sit for that exam. South Africa, I think, has temporarily put a pause in that process as they're reevaluating the situation. As Austin said, each country makes its own decisions about how they would accept or look at internationally trained healthcare providers. Even whether you're a nurse or doctor, just because you're a nurse or doctor does not mean you automatically can work in another country. It depends on that other country rules for accepting and having some type of exam process to register. So it's not automatic. We understand that Botswana, in their health professions legislation recognizes clinical officers, and that many clinical officers from Kenya had actually gone to Botswana and been registered to work. And Mr. Tabo has identified a few of those clinicians, and very interested to learn more about that process. Now, the United States is just beginning to consider accepting internationally trained PAs to work in the United States. And as Austin has said, the National Commission Certification of PAs, NCCPA, as well as the ARC-PA, the Accreditation Review Council of PAs, is looking to see whether they should begin accrediting international PA master education programs. And should that happen, those students who might graduate from the international PA master programs might be considered for coming to the United States to sit for the PA national exam in the US. Now, this is all just in an early discussion phase right now, and many of us in international education and international profession have been invited to a meeting, which is this Friday and Saturday in the United States, taking place in Georgia, where the NCCPA headquarters is, and they're going to be deliberating upon this possible process. Just as the GMC has made a decision, they will set a criteria for looking at internationally trained PAs. The US is now considering what process they have. The US may take a different process than other countries, as they may actually accredit international PA master education programs in other countries and do it that way. The GMC is not accrediting other programs, but they're looking at individual credentials and making decisions based on that. We also know that there's a lot of reciprocity happening. We do hear the East Africa harmonization process. Austin talked about the West Africa harmonization process within the United States. You of course are familiar, the 50 states have different rules and different laws. And so each state has its own rule for regulating a PA. They accept PAs who have passed the national exam. They accept PAs who have completed an accredited PA master program. But one state does not necessarily recognize another state's license of a PA. A PA cannot necessarily just move to another state and start practicing. You would have to register with that state and go through that process. However, there is a new law being introduced called the PA licensure concept that could allow for states to have reciprocity. So it is just beginning to happen now that if you're registered in one state, you may be able to cross the border and easily work in another state. That's just beginning, as you are doing in East Africa. So we're really seeing around the world a lot of reciprocity, a lot of opening up of doors to allow people to work in different places from where they've been educated. And IAPAE and GACOPA and others are really working in this area. And I think I propose that we as a collective should start gathering this information and make a list of these countries that do allow such reciprocity, and what are those requirements, and from what countries could you come from. I think this would be a great resource to have. We could host it on the IAPAE website or GACOPA website for where reciprocity does exist. Thank you so much, Chair. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, President Scott, President Austin, and those who have contributed to that discussion. I understand that we almost have an hour past the time we were supposed to close. Please bear with us. So the last agenda was about the legal framework, and I think in our deliberations, we have really discussed about the legal framework, because it's about the provisions for equation when you go to other countries. I think that has been well covered. So I want to welcome back my co-moderator, Mary Boniface, to take us through the question and answer session. And we can start with Timothy, who has raised his hand. We can take probably 5 questions orally from those who raise their hands. And then we take the others that another 5 that were posted in the Q&A. And Nelson, you can assist us to be able to do that. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Peterson. We do not have any questions in the chat box so far, but we have a few people who have raised their hands. And in order for the mic to be opened for you, then you have to raise your hand, then the IT person will enable you, and then you go ahead and ask your question. So I will allow Timothy to go first, then Vincent. So Timothy Merama. Nelson, please.
Maybe you need to, Mary, you need to know that you need to press on the mic, and then allowed to use the mic. As he comes, I think he has also
Hello?
He has managed to
Thank you.
be working in different countries. He can also give his history, how he managed to work in several countries despite the different regulatory framework.
Thank you. Thank you, George, and I hope you've heard that clearly, Timothy. Please come in.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just have to thank the entire team and leadership and Peterson for the great work that you're doing. And this has really made us have better visibility. And we are happy that now the approach you're giving it could open doorways for a big number of us joining the international market. This will take us away from individualized effort for us to work and try to pave ways for ourselves, and this will also take away the selfish interest we have, because some of us are working, actually having international assignments. They work outside, but they come back in Kenya and they remain silent. They don't want to come up and showcase their effort and what they've done to be able to join international market. I just happened to join the international market, but this was just purely on individualized effort through friends and referral. So I've had an opportunity to work in Iraq and Department of Defense for the US. On the basis that I had a background of work, having worked in the military before, and they had other requirements that I required to be cleared. So I've also happened to work in offshore assignments and in oil and gas as a medic. And I realize the challenges that you are already discussing about and what we are trying to resolve. That includes our naming, the nomenclature. So we always have some challenges in describing ourselves. But however, the great news is that once you are given an opportunity to practice, then you are able to showcase, and most of the time the employers become very happy and they are ready to hire one of our kinds. So, and my question now is, I would wish to ask Dennis and Makange, who are currently working, if I'm not wrong to have heard that they're working in the UK. You guys, how did you go about it? Are you registered under physician associate as we're talking right now, or how are you working at the moment? Are you still working as clinical officers? How did it go about? And if you happen to register as physician assistants, is there a way you can be able to explain to us, for us to understand how to go about it? Is it possible that we can register by just directly sitting for the exams that are required for us to register, or we have to go through some academic process? We have to train and be registered. So I will just need to understand that, so that we can be able to have good knowledge exactly how to go about that. I would wish to register that. And is there possibility, actually, this one goes to Peterson, there are possibilities that this can be like a government to government arrangement, so that we can benefit from mass advocacy for the great number of clinical officers that we're having around. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Timothy. There was another hand. Who was that? If you have a question, please raise your hand so that we can give you an opportunity. And thank you for the nice comments in the chat box. Maina Ngugi. Maina has raised their hand. Nelson, please give them a mic.
He has the mic.
Maina, if you can hear me, unmute and raise your question. As we wait for Maina to come, someone from the chat box is asking about the specialties for PAs and clinical officers in the USA, Canada, UK. And your question will be answered shortly, Ronald. Any other hands? I'll give this to Maskuji, and then Scott can weigh in on the question of specialties in the USA, Canada, and the UK. Maskuji, then Scott.
Okay. Thank you, Timothy, for your question, and I appreciate you for what you have done. Like, what I can say, we happen to be here in the UK on other capacities that it's then when we realize that the GMC, which is the General Medical Council, is in a process to accept registration for people who are equivalent to physician associates. And now that have been trained in Kenya as a clinical officer, then it happens that we are in that list. And I have shared, probably maybe you are not in, I shared the criteria, what is required for you to be registered, with the GMC. And I want to say that there are two examination you will do. One, they call it para and pen. It's like what we do back in Kenya. You do your final exam at the college or at the university. And then after that, you are subjected again to another examination from the council, which is the COC, before you go for your internship. But in this case, once you do the two examination, of which one is more of an OSCE, then you are ready. You will be given your license, your registration, and from that point, you are good to look for a job and work as a physician associate. Maybe if I can share, the other shortest route is to do, there is a course being offered in Kenya at a higher national diploma in cardiology. Once you do that and you qualify, you will come here, you work directly as a cardiology kind of with your I can say with your certificates as a clinical officer and a certificate as higher national diploma in cardiology. So I think that is what I can be able to answer from your question. Unless there's anything that I'm omitting, probably Dennis can also chip in and maybe can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Maskuj. We have two specialists in the UK. We have anesthetist, and we have anesthetist associate and physician associate. Or if you have done a higher diploma in anesthesia, then you can apply to come as anesthetist associate. And if you just have a general practitioner, then you just apply as a physician associate. The other course which Maskuchi was talking about, you can, if you are a clinical officer, I think there is also a college which offers echocardiogram, which you do, I think, 3 months course, and then after that, we have 2 bodies, either one in the US and the other one is in the European countries, where you register as a cardiac physiologist. You come and do the echocardiography for the patient. So that's another option which you can come as a specialist. For you to, the criteria, you have the 8 criteria for you to register with the GMC, of which you have to fulfill all the 8 criteria before you are subjected to the first exam, which is the para. Para is a theory exam, which is more of a MCQ, around 200 MCQs. After you pass that exam, then you are subjected to OSCE, which is a clinical structured exam, which you will have around 12 stations. You have to go through them, and you have to certify that, yes, you have handled all the 12 stations successfully for you to pass. And then now you will be registered.
Thank you so much. Sorry?
If you will have certified the examination body by doing all those, then you are good to go. But as I said, the first stage which is very important. When you will, after you have created your profile with the GMC, they will want you to upload your documents. When you are uploading the documents, they will have maybe your passport and all that. The important part, biggest part is your transcripts. Make sure that you check everyone checks their transcript, that they meet the minimum number of hours which the GMC wants. Because if you don't meet that one and you will have paid, then you will be disqualified and you will not be able to reapply, and you cannot even, in short, you have lost your money, which is a bit expensive, and you will also be disqualified not to apply again. So make sure that you all put your transcript in order, check the minimum required number of hours before you apply. Thank you.
Just to add something on top of that, just to clarify, thank you for what you can still reapply, but now you can't appeal. Your money would have just gone that way. And someone was asking about Germany. I can say the last time we met the PS Labour, that was a month ago, he was so excited when he realized that the UK can now, Kenyan clinical officers can now apply to go to the UK. But he was very much categorical that Kenya has got an MOU between government to government, that's government to government, with Germany. And we know that Germany has got PAs. So I still believe that if you still apply to be a PA in the United Kingdom and you qualify, then you can easily, with that license, you can easily work in Germany. But for now, I think we are still waiting for confirmation from the PS Labour, where he's still going to invite us to see if maybe them now, as Kenya, they can engage the government of Germany now that clinical officers are being recognized globally. Thank you. I've answered that question on the chat box.
Thank you so much, Makange. I really appreciate that. Is quite elaborate in the way you have just explained it, and I'm happy for that. My focus mainly has been if I can be able to work in, or some of my colleagues can be able to work in offshore as medics, because practically, actually, I will tell you for sure, I've had like 2 opportunities now to work in the UK, but as an offshore medic, as well as occupational health and safety officer advisor. So is that alone, by just that registration, I believe it will not have or give me some restrictions when it comes that maybe I want to deploy for maritime projects.
Can you come up with your question again?
My question is, I hope by just doing that registration, it does not limit you to work in a hospital environment only. Can it allow for me to practice in remote or out of the hospital practice, like an offshore?
Yeah, once you are registered by the GMC, we have different types of employers. The main employer for us, we have the NHS, which is the government, and then we have the other private practices where you can be employed also, and also you can work maybe in the special forces, either in the Navy. You can still work as a physician associate there, because we have once the important part of it is you have to get the registration first, because that is the important part of it before you are able to apply for any work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dennis.
Yes, maybe to add on what Dennis is saying is just the same as once you have been registered with the Clinical Officers Council, then you can work anywhere within within that country, as long as that body is the law is covering within that area. Like here, you can work in private sectors, including the maritime, as you are saying. There are several homes here, nursing homes, and so forth. As long as you are registered with that body, it's regulating the practice of physician within the territory of this country. So if you are in the territory of this country, then you are good to go. Thank you.
Hey, that's good news. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kiprop, please unmute and read your question. Kiprop, can you hear us? As we wait for him to be able to unmute, there are just a few concerns in the chat box. Someone is asking if these opportunities are available currently or we are talking future. We are talking now and future because as you've heard, our two colleagues, Peter Maskuji and Dennis Karani, are already practicing in the UK. So it is something that is happening and we anticipate better in the future. Alex Kachano wants to know if for you to be able to move, there has to be country agreements for you to be allowed. I'll say yes and no, Alex, because you realize, for example, for Kenya, the GMC allowed Kenyan clinical officers to be able to apply and practice there just recently. I think it's just in the beginning of this year, but then one of our colleagues, for example, started working two years now, around going to 3 years. So I believe there are modalities that can be pursued for that to happen, even as you wait to make arrangements as a country. But I'll allow Scott to say something about that before we take up the hands. Scott?
Thank you, Mary. Yes, so just respond to Alex's question is that the UK GMC website does provide all of the criteria needed for internationally qualified PAs to apply to seek employment in the UK as a PA, and they have listed several countries where they would accept applications from. However, that's not a limited list. So please, they do say on the website that if there are countries that are not on this list but do have a PA qualification, and that those PA qualifications are accredited within their country, and if those PAs are also regulated and registered within the country, then they would consider applications from those countries. IAPAE has been in conversation with GMC and those persons who are involved in the regulation and involved in reviewing the criteria. And we're supporting them with information from Loop so that we can provide them with evidence of the clinical training of PAs, clinical officers, clinical practitioners around the world. And in those discussions, the persons at GMC have been saying that they do want to expand that list of countries. So don't be limited there. And IAPAE can help support these countries to submit information to GMC to demonstrate, our clinical practitioners have the appropriate training to meet their criteria. And if I might also, Mary, just continue, there's been a few chats around the term of doctor. Just most recently, let me know your thoughts on acquisition of the title doctor for bachelor's, graduate, clinical officers, physician associates. We do recognize that there is a lot of controversy around this use of the doctor title, and does it apply to whom, and what qualification can one have to use the doctor title. And I think it's really important that we refer to each country and each country's rules and regulations and legislature around the use of the title doctor. In most countries, the title DR or doctor is often referred to the medical doctor, and one would complete a medical doctor training program to be able to legally use the initials DR or to be called a doctor, referred to a medical doctor. Or the second use of the DR term or doctor term is when one completes a doctorate program, a doctor of philosophy, a PhD program. A PhD program would then allow that person to use the title DR, being a doctor of philosophy, which would be often an academic and a research process. So really, around the globe, the term DR is reserved for those who graduate from a Doctor of Medicine program or those who graduate from a Doctor of Philosophy program. There are some other countries that do in their legislature have some terms. Bangladesh, for a certain period of time, allowed diploma clinical officer graduates, they call them medical assistants, diploma graduates, to use the term DR. That's recently now been questioned in court, whether that's actually legally allowed. So it is interesting, this title and how it's come about. I mean, in layman's terms, many in the clinic will call anyone who does healthcare a doctor. And patients are very happy to see people who help them, and they often will call them a doctor, maybe not knowing what their qualification is or what the legal aspect of legislation grants them to use that title. But I think it is important that we, as clinicians, respect the laws and respect who has been granted the term DR for a medical doctor or for a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy. I'm not a doctor. I studied as a physician associate in the United States, a master level training, and I'm very proud to be a physician associate, and I'm very proud that I am Mr. Scott Smalley, PA-C, physician associate who is certified in the United States. I'm also very proud that I'm a clinical associate registered here in South Africa with the Health Practice Council. I'm also very proud that I was registered as a clinical officer in Kenya. And I'm very happy that my patients would refer to me as Mr. Scott. And often, there'd be a long queue and patients in Kenya would be ready to see the doctor. The doctor's ready for you, but the patient would say, no, I'm going to see Mr. Scott. He takes care of me. He takes time with me. He provides my medication list for me. This happened many times in Kenya, that patients would say, no, I'm going to wait for Mr. Scott. I don't want to see the doctor. I want to see Mr. Scott. And they might at the end call me doctor. Thank you so much. And I'd correct them and say, I'm a clinical officer providing care for you today. I think it's really important that we do bring this in the conversation. And we know that doctor title is reserved legally by law in most countries for those that have studied Doctor of Medicine or those that are a PhD. And certainly many of us who are clinical officers are going on to get their PhD, and we commend that and want to support that. And then we can respectfully call them doctor for their academic PhD title. Thank you so much, Mary, for those comments.
Thank you, Scott. Lumbani, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation, and looking at the chat section, the audience is really engaging and is very happy. I wanted to mention just two things. There was a question about what is it, can somebody work maybe in your country? So I wanted to mention one thing about the SADC. They had reached an agreement that they don't want brain drain. So as such, if you're from, for instance, from Tanzania, Malawi, or DRC, to work in South Africa was a challenge because of the agreement that politicians per se had agreed upon. So for you to work, for instance, if you're coming to South Africa, the bottleneck is not much of your qualification to a certain extent. It was with the Department of Health because you had to submit different documentation. However, it's not because they are not recognizing the degree or the diploma that you are having, but it's because of the agreement. With that, now comes the loop where we are saying we are similar in terms of our practice, regardless of the different names that we have. I want to appeal to the audience here, and maybe if you're here, it means that you can be an ambassador to inform somebody. We need to have a lot of curriculums to be mapped with the loop. I'm hearing from here that there are different curriculums within Kenya, which puts different people. Sorry, Moses, maybe you can mute. Moses Mungai. The different curriculums from the different institutions, we need to map all of those because as IAPA, we can be able to showcase to say, in Kenya, we have such programs and they are at this level. In Malaysia, in US, in UK, in South Africa, wherever, we can map that out and then that can be documentation that can be valid because it's scientific. The way we are doing it, and sooner or later we might be writing up manuscripts, articles in different platforms just to showcase that indeed a PA, clinical officer, whatever we are called, clinical practitioners, they are on this level. So I want to appeal and really invite everyone who is engaged in a higher institution, especially in training, please release those curriculums so that we can be able to map them. And also, may you be part of us as we are mapping the curriculums. And as we are mapping, I appreciate Austin, the president for GACOPA is here. Another agreement is the agreements which were being made by the different government officials. It didn't include us as practitioners because you can see in other countries, they are properly trained, they have the qualifications, but they don't have posts. Or if you go to other countries like UK saying, okay, you can come and work here because they know that in their system, there is employment that clean A's from around the globe can be able to offer their services. So maybe as we are talking about international framework and enabling legal frameworks, these are the things that we need to have discussion so that we can be able to map out what is proper for our profession. We need to be on the table. It's high time that we watch, but we need to be on the table and discuss information that will help the PAs and clinical officers on a global level. Thank you.
Thank you, Lumbani. And at Austin, kindly allow me take this hand so that you can answer one or two questions from that as we look towards closing up. Vincent?
So, okay, hello everyone. So my name is Vincent and I'm a clinical officer, bachelor's degree graduate. And first and foremost, hello, are you getting me?
We can, but be a bit loud, please.
Okay, so first and foremost, I would like to recognize the efforts of the clinical officers, union, union of clinical officers for the efforts they have tried to come up for this forum. It's very educative and very impactful. Personally, I've learned a lot of aspects regarding the international markets of clinical officers. So mine is more of a compliment and the efforts of also I would also like to recognize the efforts of GACOPA in uniting think officers around the globe. I really support the quest for global nomenclature. So my first question is going around the speciality. I heard that some clinical officers are qualified and practicing as sonographers in the United Kingdom. So I would like to know how they did that. How what are the requirements or to join such specialties in the in abroad? Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Kipro? Kipro, can you hear us? I think he cannot. So, Austin, you can now come in and then answer Vincent's question.
Thank you so much. What I just wanted to clarify was, as we also push to really have our profession known worldwide, we are almost there. We also encourage to really reach out to governments. And a lot of sensitization has already been done here in Kenya, where the clinical officer profession here in Kenya is really at its peak. We are known all over. Unlike 10 years ago, you can't compare. With the coming up of the union and also the strong association, we are really doing it well when it comes to sensitization. We've encouraged the government, and now the government can even listen to clinical officers. I just want to say that these bilateral talks really help a lot. Just as I mentioned earlier, the bilateral talks between Kenya and Botswana, at that time when President Festus Mogae and President Daniel Arap Moi reached an agreement, then this really, we need to take advantage of such bilateral talks to reach out to governments. Kenya, as I stated earlier, has got an MOU with Germany, where nurses can go and work there. And we asked the PS labor that even the clinical officers now can also be brought on board, because we have the physician assistants in Germany. Recently, just yesterday, you saw the King of Netherlands, that's the Dutch, together with the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen. They are here in Kenya, and if you look at the MOU that, or the memorandum of understanding that they had, you could see part of even the issues of health and migration, migration of labor was discussed there at length. So because we know there are PS even in the Netherlands, there are physician assistants in the Netherlands, if we can be engaging government, like here in Kenya, we engage the Ministry of Labor, and we also tell them about what we are planning to do or what we do, then such issues can be discussed at that level, so that even, because I'm very sure any president who comes to Kenya, I believe this is KUCOEngage, we are discussing about the international labor and all those things. Any president who comes to Kenya, before a president comes to Kenya, there are a lot of things that are discussed. There is always, they even send people prior to that. Some even will go to that country where the president, the visiting president is coming from. They discuss a lot of things from education, agriculture, health, and all these things. So by the time, if we engage the relevant Ministry of Labor, then we will be having that calendar that such as a president, like now the King of Netherlands, because the King of Netherlands is the head of state. And again, it's very, very important. When he was coming, he was also accompanied by even the equivalent of the cabinet secretary for foreign affairs and the cabinet secretary for health was also there. So all these people, if we can engage them at that level, then it becomes also very easy, because the other people will go back there and even initiate any regulation or anything that will be needed. So that is one of the things that I wanted to discuss. Madam Mary, what was the question? The other question?
The question was about clinical officers, sonographer. But I think Maskuji will be in a better position to answer that.
Oh, okay.
We have encountered any in the UK. And just before I take the other hand, one of our panelists, Rabo, wants to leave. I don't know whether he's still here or he has already left. Rabo, are you there? I think he has already dropped. I wanted to have him make his final remarks before he goes. Okay, Hassan has dropped. Mark?
Yeah, Mary?
Yes?
Yeah, maybe with your indulgence, we are 1 hour past the time that we had given our panelists, and we might be wronging them. I wanted to request that they can give their final comments even as they respond to the questions that have already been asked, or if they can be summarized, if there are some which are still in the inbox, and as well as give them their last remarks, including the future prospects and what they would like us to know about their institutions.
I totally agree with you, Chair. Then let me start with Scott, because I understand he also wants to drop out. Scott, then Lumbani, and then Maskuji Gatwe. I call them. Scott, please.
Great, Asante, thank you. And it's wonderful to have so many people on this call. I'm so impressed with Kenya and the clinical officers. You have 155 people on this call right now. You really have strength. You have 30,000 of your clinical officers practicing medicine in Kenya. I mean, more than 70% of your medicine is provided by your clinical officers. Your union is very strong. Your association is strong. Your council is, of course, leading the way. I commend you. You know, IAPAE has learned so much from Kenya and learned so much from our brothers and sisters. As you have been here since 1929, you're really making inroads in areas. We follow you, we listen to you. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about the global opportunities. IAPAE really is the international education association working to support the educators of this great profession. And we work hand in hand with KUCOEngage and also with the regional associations and the country associations, such as the Kenya Union. And we're really excited that we're going to be partnering with the Kenya Clinical Officers Association for the IAPAE and the Kenya Clinical Officers Association Conference coming up in October. We're very excited about that, and I'll have Ms. Lumbani share more of the details. That's coming up in October, 15 to 18, and taking place in Naivasha. So we're very excited. You know, the word is just beginning to come out. I'm sure the association will share more with you, Clinical Officers Association share more with you. We'll have official flyer coming out very soon. We have agreed upon the date and the location. IAPAE is very excited to bring our conference to Kenya. And I really appreciate the time to work collaboratively with everyone. We are stronger together. Please do join IAPAE's website. Please do join our international quarterly educator meetings. Please do join our loop work to do the curriculum mapping. You can see all of the strong empirical evidence and research we have really influences policy to move forward. So I thank the organizers for this and appreciate being on the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Scott. We always appreciate tapping into your wisdom. I believe we will interact again soon. Lumbani, over to you.
I really want to an honor to be part of this panel. And as Scott has said, we'll learn a lot from Kenya. And I want to say this to everyone. You may not know how strong you are until you have overcome. So I would urge you that let's continue groundbreaking. We shouldn't be afraid to dig deeper until we get the recognition that we deserve. Yes, there are others asking, will my profession, will my qualification be accepted? you cannot know whether it will be accepted unless you show how capable you are. So I want to appreciate everyone here and also invite you, get engaging with the organizations that you have in place, because we are stronger together. We cannot fight battles without each other. This GMC started by asking us as professions to say, what are your curriculums? What is it that you do in this country, in that country? Because we showcased the curriculums. That's the reason why they're saying, okay, now come to the table. You can register because we know what you are. Please don't get stingy about sharing the knowledge. Please, if you have created a path for somebody, for yourself, make sure that you make it wide enough so that there can be other people who should walk in that path. Thank you so much once more. I really appreciate the organizers, and I hope that we're going to interact again very soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Madam President, for honoring our invitation. We really appreciate you, and we hope for future discussions of this, because as you've seen, people are very interested. So it is a discussion we need to get back to in the near future. Thank you so much, and be blessed. On to Maskuji, and as you come in, please mention something about what Vincent asked. Maskuji Peter, karibu.
Okay, thank you, Mary and the entire team, first and foremost for organizing this forum and having me on board. Maybe before I close, maybe to answer the question about on Vincent, in terms of sonography, so far, what I know is only in regards to the training or the specialty in echocardiogram, and this is because there is a body here in the UK and probably in the US, which is recognizing that the training from Kenya, and it's specifically from a certain institution in Kenya, which I think is University of Aga Khan University, I think so, if I'm not wrong. That's the much I can say in regard to sonography. Yeah, but let's not become our own limitation. Let's not limit ourselves. Better things are coming, good things are coming. We need, who was having an idea or who was thinking that one day UK will be opening the doors for clinical officers? So let's continue training, let's continue sharing information that we have so that we can be able to bring on board more clinical officers, practice all over the country. Because I think like in Kenya, yeah, like we are around 30,000, and we know that the market in Kenya cannot absorb all of us, the 30,000 of us. But if we keep on sharing information on the job market globally, then it will make easy. The other thing is to appreciate IAPAE, GACOPA, because you are actually the people who are opening these doors, and we are looking upon you to engage with different countries so that you can make us recognized. And this is the way to go. And I think we will be all proud to be clinical officers. And I think we will not be running up and down looking for the DR title, which some of our degrees are looking for them because they want to find an identity. But I know if our market is bigger enough, then we will not be running to these other titles. With that much said, I want to stop at that. Thank you so much. Back to you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fuji. That is quite powerful. We are happy to have interacted and learned a lot from you. And like you've heard, then, we can only keep doing better. It's a new area, so we need to keep exploring. Thank you so much. On to Austin, your closing remarks.
Yeah, I can go. Let me go before the others because my phone is almost going off. I hope you won't mind. So thank you so much, the Mary and Peterson, who have been moderating this insightful meeting. That we realize that it has also been attended by majority of the people. I just want to encourage ourselves that the sky is the limit. That no human is limited. We can do, and we are experts in different fields. We really want to just say that we are trying to bring the clinical officers or the PS together globally, and that time that we will now be like the nurses, because you see the nurses, it becomes very easy for them in almost all the countries, and it's the only country that has got they only have their own regulatory body in almost 90% of the countries in the world. So we will reach there. I just want to encourage us to engage further, get information from the details that we've given. We've given the websites there. The COPA works with the IAPAE. We have an upcoming conference in Ethiopia that is in Addis Ababa next month. Next month, April 27th to 29th. There is a WhatsApp group for those who are planning to attend that conference. Please make sure you attend that conference. A lot of these people, you will see them at the conference. Scott Smalley will be there, team from Zambia. So that is just the second East Africa Clinical Officers Conference. The first one took place in Zanzibar. So this one that will take place in Addis Ababa is the registration fee is $100. If you can contact me, I will give you the link for registration. There is also a group where those who will be traveling by using a truck, a very nice truck that will be transporting people at some fee. There is a group there that discussions are ongoing. Then for those who want to make it in April, there is also another international conference that we'll be having in August 27th to 30th. It will take place at the Aston University in Birmingham. If you just look at the Aston University website, you will get the link there for registration. The registration fee is £200. And you can also go to the GACOPA website, gacopa.org. You'll also find the link there. You can also contact us if you need any assistance. But then we also meet there. It will be both hybrid. Those who want to make it to UK will follow it. Then, of course, October, IAPAE comes to Kenya. IAPAE last year was in the United States. So we will be having that conference together with the Kenya Clinical Officers Association in October. The dates will be announced. So those are the activities that we are having. We are also having a leadership forum for clinical practitioners in Nigeria that will be in Abuja. And it is also double up as the West Africa Academy of Physician Assistants meeting. It will take place in May. The dates will be communicated. So with those many remarks, we have the groups of GACOPA. So anybody who is willing, my contacts are there. You can reach out to me. We add you in those groups, and the conversation will continue. I'm very sure we'll have another meeting of KUCOEngage on the issues of international issues of our profession internationally very soon. With those many remarks, thank you so much, and have a blessed evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, our GACOPA president. We always appreciate the work you're doing to bring clinical officers together, and we will be here to support you and to rally you so that you can continue doing the good job, like you always call it, the Lord's work. Thank you so much. Dennis Karani.
Thank you, Mary. We maybe start with adding some points on cardiac sonography. is cardiac ultrasound, not cardiac sonography. So I think so far what I know, there are two institutions. One is the University of Aga Khan, and the other one is another institution. I'm trying to remember the name, but I'll share the flyers in the KUCO group, and then maybe we'll share with the other clinical officers. That's where you do a 3-month course for the ultrasound, and then you'll be attached in a Agati. After that, when you qualify, now you can register either in the US or in the UK. You come and practice as a echocardiography. They call them cardiac physiologists. Then I'd like to thank KUCO, IAPAE for the good work you're doing. Thank you so much. Just push on. I'll just emphasize on the words of our IAPAE president, that it's high time that we are not only seen and heard, but we sit on the table also and negotiate for our rights. So with that, I always tell my colleagues here that we be our brothers and sisters keeper, and when you see any opportunity, don't be selfish, just share out to everyone, so that anyone who is successful, you know that it's our family which is successful, and our family is the clinical officers and the physician associates and the clinical officials, the medical associates, all of them we are all family now. Thank you so much, and hope to have another interactive session on later. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dennis. We really appreciate you for accepting our invitation. It's been quite a while since you left to the UK, and we're happy to learn that one of our own is doing well and setting standards out there. We hope to see you again very soon. And now to George Gibore.
Okay, Mary, thank you very much for the invitation. I think, as I had said, I was late even to join this because of the other meeting that I was participating. We are just done. And I must first start by appreciating everyone for participating, and also the panelists for finding time to be here. Also our colleagues, Mascourge, and also Dennis, Dennis, who is outside the country. Our deputy SG, who is also doubling, or rather is the president of GACOPA, the president of the former president for IAPAE, and also Lumbani, for their much contribution into this discussion. I think we believe that we need to be ensuring that all these are recorded and they're available for those who will want to see them. They will be uploaded in our website for people to follow through and be able to feel if there is any question, you can channel it to us. We'll be able to get someone at least to respond to that. It is our desire that we open up the world for us and ensure that the right thing is being done. As we discuss about the framework, the training, and then we get to understand where we're taking these people. It is a fact thing that we cannot avoid, owing to the fact that we talk about 30,000 registered clinical officers in the country, and the government has only engaged less than around 7,000. Yes, there are those who are employed, self-employed. Are they happy where they are? I think it is also a different discussion that we can be able to have. Now, as we continue connecting, because it's connectivity that will assist us open up, there are other entities that make a decision about what we are discussing, including the issues of common nomenclature is an issue that must be discussed across all the other involved stakeholders, but the decision must be be made by the ILO, of which they have that proposal before them. I believe that they will consider it in our favor. And it takes time, by the way, before this is made, because this has been a discussion for several years. So there is historical memory on this, and we believe that we can continue engaging. As I said, some of us probably are engaging in this discussion for the first time. We always have this discussion every month, and we believe that you ought to follow up so that you are able to benefit. And actually, to be specific, is the third week. It is always the third Wednesday of every month, where we normally have this discussion, KUCOEngage, discuss specific topics that will enable us to access opportunities that is not there, and including, we may not limit ourselves to issues of what I can call investment and also employment, as we discuss. So let me again appreciate everyone for participating. I also return the mic to the moderator, those who moderated the meeting, Mary Boniface and Peterson Washira, our treasurer and the chair respectively. We'll continue having this discussion. I think I'll be happy the day when we invite people who need to talk about how do we manage money and how do we get money, because we must get money and we must manage money for us to be people, reasonably so that we can be able to grow as a profession. Asanteni sana na mkuwe na jioni njema.
Thank you so much, George. We appreciate, and for you even having to leave another meeting to be able to join us. Thank you so much, and have a blessed evening. So from me, I would like to say thank you for coming in good numbers to attend this discussion. Very key issues have been highlighted as pathways for progress as clinical officers. And the work does not stop here. It is upon us to support our leaders and the organizations that are bringing the reforms that, are creating an enabling environment for our clinical officers to be able to move to the global stage. And we are going to do this together, like you've been told. We can only work better as a team. So from me, that is it. I want to welcome my co-moderator, the chair, to make his final remarks and then close the meeting for us. Karibu Peterson, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Boniface. Thanks to all who have been able to join this conversation. And as Gibore has said, every third Wednesday of every month, we have similar conversations under the KUCOEngage. And we are going to have, for the whole of this year, we have a calendar which we'll be able to share. Nelson, I hope you can be able to share the calendar here. But also, if you want to revisit today's conversation or the conversation that happened in the past 2 months, you can just go to YouTube and look for KUCO TV. And under the KUCO TV or the Clinical Officers Union website, you are going to find these videos where you can be able to review and get more information. Special regards to, of course, all our panelists. We have had 3 presidents from 2 international bodies for clinical officers. The past president for International Academy for Physician Associate Educators, Mr. Scott Smalley. The current president, Ms. Lumbani. And we also had the president for Global Association for Clinical Officers, Physician Associates, and Analogs, as well as 2 clinical officers practicing in the UK, one being our treasurer, our assistant treasurer, Peter Maskuji, and our former Mombasa branch official, Mr. Karani, who have since transitioned to UK. We had my counterpart from the Union of Botswana, the Vice President, Mr. Thabo Sebeso, and of course, our GS, George Gibore. We cannot thank you enough. You have shared quite some very good information that is going to assist us. And let us keep here. Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for joining, for finding time to be here. See you next time. See you in April. Have a good evening, have a good night, have a good afternoon for those who are in which the time zones are in the morning, and have a good night for the East African community. Thank you and have a good night.
And a future will be created when clinical officers can be able to sit together, deliberate, and have conversations that give them a way forward into what kind of a future they want for their profession.
Because we want us to become the best profession, the best healthcare practitioners that there is in East and in East Africa and generally in the whole continent.
Every Wednesday, every third Wednesday in each month, we are going to have these conversations between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to ensure that we can be able to cover a wide scope of the conversations that clinical officers have been yearning for, so that we can provide solutions for many of the issues that have been bedeviling our profession, from academic advancement to an employment crisis to financial well-being.
And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to participate in these sessions so that we can learn together, grow together, and be able to practice clinical medicine with the best that we got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.
My name is Peterson Washira.
My name is Mary Boniface.
My name is George Gibore.
I am the National Chair of the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the National Treasurer, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
I'm the General Secretary, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers.
We have a program called KUCOEngage, a program by the Kenya Union of Clinical Officers that intends to foster conversations that matter for clinical officers.
Through this program, we plan to look into the history and the current situation of clinical medicine as a profession, and how to even go through the career ladder to the topmost within the profession.
Our focus is purely about our enthusiasm as the Clinical Officers Union to inform our member about our history, being the longest serving professional in the country since 1928. We have a long history that we want our members to know.
We intend to foster meaningful conversations, deliberations, so that as clinical officers, as a family, we can be able to move this profession forward.
And therefore, it's going to be a very engaging time for us to be able to learn from where we have come from, where we are heading, and where we want to go.
We are going to have panelists coming from the most experienced to the new generation to speak about ourselves and inform ourselves on a number of other issues, including opportunity, the legal framework that provide for our existence.
One person named Peter Drucker said that the best way to predict the future is by creating it. And a future will be created when clinical officers can be able to sit together, deliberate, and have conversations that give them a way forward into what kind of a future they want for their profession.
Because we want us to become the best profession, the best healthcare practitioners that there is in East and in East Africa and generally in the whole continent.
Every Wednesday, every third Wednesday in each month, we are going to have these conversations between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to ensure that we can be able to cover a wide scope of the conversations that clinical officers have been yearning for, so that we can provide solutions for many of the issues that have been bedeviling our profession, from academic advancement to an employment crisis to financial well-being.
And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to participate in these sessions so that we can learn together, grow together, and be able to practice clinical medicine with the best that we got.
We will be coming together as the clinical officers and as a family.
Indeed, we want to speak about the opportunity that is there for us and what the union is doing to ensure that we can maximize that opportunity that we have.